had just come of age when I became the crown princess of southern Ju. Now, the crown prince has just ascended the throne and can't wait to come and discuss with me, bringing his beloved back to the palace. Of course, I had no objections. After all, I had been planning for this for so long. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. It was all for this day, in the winter of the 41st year of the Yuanli era. The emperor of southern Ju passed away. Following the imperial edict, Crown Prince Ju Qi ascended the throne. The entire nation was draped in mourning white, dressed in a crimson western satin skirt with silver kisi embroidery, tended to the garden full of red plum blossoms. Ju Qi stepped into my courtyard through the wind and snow. Why are you dressed so lightly? As he spoke, he tried to drape his cloak over me. I looked up at him. The Directorate of Ceremonial said they would deliver the new phoenix robe within 3 days. Ju Qi's hands paused as he fastened the cloak. Anan, I want to bring Rongjia back. I had just come of age when I became the crown princess of southern Ju. Now, as soon as the crown prince ascended the throne, he rushed over to discuss bringing his beloved back to the palace. Seeing my silence, he continued, Anan, we both know this is just a partnership. Besides, you were the head of the household, the legitimate crown princess. During my time as crown prince, you will be the most honorable empress in the future, so there's no need to cling to the childish games of your youth. I turned away from him and interrupted, as you wish, but I can't predict how she will fare in the palace in the days to come. His face darkened. In that case, you should also consider the consequences of your actions. He left in a hurry after uttering that casual threat. Consequences. The moment I stepped into this capital, I never once considered the consequences. Seeing his eagerness, I knew he was rushing to share the good news with his beloved. I had caught a glimpse of her once in my youth, at a poetry gathering hosted by the noble ladies of the capital. This gentle and lovely sweetheart of Ju Qi, the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Revenue, Song Ruja. From that one time, I became enemies with her. Back then, with just a few words, I completely refuted what she thought was a flawless strategy. After that, she pretended it was an unintentional mistake and pushed me into the lake. This is what Ju Qi calls playful mischief. Finally, there was her increasingly intense fabrications about me, even when I did nothing. The malice still grew wildly like vines. Perhaps she thought that since I grew up in the military, I wouldn't understand the intricate schemes of these noble households. Gradually, a nursery rhyme spread through the capital. A phoenix perches on the Song family. Before the Song family could quell the rumors, she was summoned to the palace by an imperial decree and became the late emperor's consort Shun. After all, such a magnificent phoenix as her, who else but the emperor was worthy of her? When she entered the palace, the late emperor was 3 years older than her own father. My current husband, at that time, fiercely asked me if this was my doing. Seeing that I remained unfazed, he seemed to have taken it for granted that I was the one behind the scenes, so he turned and left, never mentioning the matter again from that day on. He only said, our great task is yet unfinished. How can we let personal feelings interfere with our grand plan? At that time, I had just arrived in the capital, my heart filled with thoughts of revenge, but the closer I got to the truth, the more disheartened I became. But I was powerless, after all. Everyone knew that a powerless orphan girl, no matter what she did, could never tear a hole in the sky, so I approached Ju Qi, who was then just the crown prince. He had just been released from the imperial clan court. The court affairs were once again entirely controlled by consort Hua. To put it nicely, he was the crown prince, but in reality, he was no different from a stray dog. I can help you, assist you in ascending to that position. At that time, his eyes were full of scrutiny. You. On what grounds? Your Highness knows I am but an orphan girl, yet I am the orphan of the Murong family. He pondered for a moment, a smile rising in his eyes. What do you want from me? I only ask that when your Highness ascends the throne, you grant me the position of Empress. Ju Qi had investigated me, but what could he possibly uncover? The events of that year have long been buried with the wind and sand of the Battle of Kaiyun. Of course, I knew that Ju Qi and Song Ruja were deeply in love with each other, so when I found out that his Song family was also one of the culprits behind the events of that year, I had already made up my mind. I will not let a single one of the executioners from that incident get away. Even though I had already designed their separation as lovers, when Ju Qi remained indifferent, I thought about how to add more fuel to the fire between them. So, the moment Ju Qi said he would bring Song Ruja back to the palace, I felt it was a heaven-sent opportunity. The east wind should be coming. In the early spring of the 41st year of Yuanli, the coronation ceremony, the eunuch's sharp voice echoed through the grand hall. By the decree of heaven, the emperor proclaims, the late emperor's consort, Lady Song, had a younger sister named Shu. Moved by her circumstances, the Minister of Revenue took her in as his adopted daughter. Shu, frail in her youth, was raised on Mount Shuayun, amid the perilous cliffs of Kaiyun. She rescued us in a moment of crisis, and we are indebted to her kindness. Furthermore, observing her virtuous and gentle conduct, her grace moving even heaven, we hereby confer upon her the title of noble consort of the third rank, with the honorific Jo. So it is decreed. A proper smile graced my face, while beneath the wide sleeves, my palms were drenched in blood. Kaiyun. How dare he bring up the Battle of Kaiyun again? To the north of the 8 prefectures of Kaiyun lie the fresh, fertile grasslands of Beishiro, while to the south lies the intoxicating, pleasure-filled haven of Nanju. That was my home. At that time, the general guarding the border of Nanju, who wielded great authority and was renowned far and wide, was called He. The local prefect was called Wei Guiyang, and the two were sworn friends who would die for each other. Therefore, the daughter of the Wei family, Wei Pingting, was betrothed to the eldest son of He at a very young age. Wei Pingting's younger brother, Wei Jingting, initially looked down on this marriage arrangement. He felt his sister was an exceptional person. How could a rough military man from the borderlands be worthy of her? Later, when meeting Chi, he called him brother-in-law with great enthusiasm. Chi's twin sister also hit it off with Wei Pingting at first sight. In the 36th year of Yuanli, the sky was filled with yellow sand, and the overwhelming stench of blood soared to the heavens, with blinding red everywhere. On that New Year's Eve, Beishiro launched a massive invasion. They burned, killed, and plundered. General He fought to the death and sacrificed his life, and Chi took his place. For 3 whole months, we held out for 3 whole months. The reinforcements from southern Ju were long overdue, and the number of survivors dwindled day by day. Our food supplies had run out a month earlier. Starving people cannot defeat well-fed and strong bandits. On the 3rd day of the 4th month, the most noble crown prince, Ju Qi, arrived. He condescended to bring grain, appearing impeccably handsome on the surface, but when it was discovered that the rice sacks were mixed entirely with gravel, he vowed earnestly to investigate the matter thoroughly upon returning to the capital. At that moment, a glimmer of hope reignited in the eyes of those still alive. They thought the court had not abandoned them. The crown prince was unwilling to send troops to fight. He feared that if he died here, his ambitious younger brother would get his wish and take over the eastern palace. So when Chi led a small team to scout the path and was surrounded, the agreed-upon reinforcements never came. Ju Qi was not even willing to open the city gates to let them in. Chi was dead. He died due to the court's betrayal. Wei Jingting wanted to retrieve Chi's body for his sister. The news that came back was that a little wretch had collided with the noble consort's carriage and was crushed to death by the wheels. In the mangled corpse's hand, there was still a small piece of cloth clutched tightly. It was Chi's battle robe. The child who had survived the barbarians' massacre died at the hands of his own people. Wei Pingting also died, on her way to seek justice for her younger brother and her betrothed. It is said that those in power were afraid she might talk too much. Upon learning that Beishiro had killed 2 of their generals in a row, the people were outraged and demanded that the crown prince send troops. Ju Qi agreed with unusual readiness, and in that battle, southern Ju achieved a great victory. The northern Shuro forces have retreated to negotiate peace, demanding half of the Kaiyun 8 prefectures as their share. What comes after victory? The people in the city are all sallow and emaciated. They have reached the point of exchanging children to eat, yet the imperial court turns a blind eye, allowing Kaiyun to become a ghost city. Later, the imperial court declared that the defeat in this battle was suspicious and demanded a thorough investigation. After much investigation, the final verdict was delivered. Local commandant Wei Guiyang was found guilty of colluding with the enemy and betraying the nation. All male members of his 9 generations were sentenced to slavery, and the females to prostitution. Generals He and Chi fought bravely against the enemy, but their reckless deployment of troops led to repeated defeats in battle. The court, showing compassion for the soldiers, appointed An, who had just returned to the capital, as the Princess of Dingwa. Within half a year, she was also betrothed to the crown prince. And I am An. My thoughts returned to the present. I watched Ju Qi and Song Ruja, who seemed deeply in love, with cold eyes. Feeling utterly disgusted, she quickly claimed to have caught a chill and felt unwell, then excused herself. The next day, when the concubines came to pay their respects, I said with a smile, You all have been working hard lately. Things will ease up after this busy period. The palace is in a state of disarray and needs rebuilding from top to bottom. I trust you, my dear sisters, will do your utmost." Before I could finish my words, I heard an announcement: "Her Majesty the Empress Dowager has arrived." I sneered inwardly. Here it comes. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Song Ruja, her face deathly pale, shrinking back like a quail. I paid my respects to the Empress Dowager, who appeared kind on the surface, but her smile never reached her eyes. She took my hand and sat me down, speaking softly and gently as she gave me detailed instructions. The matron beside the Empress Dowager chimed in at the right moment. "Your Majesty, many new faces have entered the palace as well." I smiled in agreement and ordered them to introduce themselves one by one. When it was Song Ruja's turn, the Empress Dowager frowned. "Who are you?" Song Ruja feigned composure. "This humble consort pays respects to the Empress Dowager." I frowned. "Why are you so timid? Go help noble consort Jor up." As the nanny went to assist her, she coincidentally revealed the plum blossom mark on her arm. The Empress Dowager said with a dark expression, "I wondered who it was. Isn't this the former dynasty's consort Shun?" "What?" "The imperial mausoleum is desolate and the Taoist temple is damp. Neither could compare to the comfort of living in this palace." "Could they?" I fanned the flames from the side. "How could that be?" "This is Consort Shun's cousin, who was just brought back from cloud-chasing peak by His Majesty the other day." The Empress Dowager looked at me. "Anna, you've been wronged. This was the Emperor's idea again, wasn't it? Guards, take this seductive and treacherous woman away, give her 50 strokes of the rod, and banish her to the breeze-viewing temple, never to leave for life." Watching the Empress Dowager's reaction, a trace of doubt arose in my heart, but I quickly suppressed it. When Song Ruja was dragged away, she wept so pitifully that it tugged at one's heartstrings. Yet there was a trace of venom in the glance she cast my way. By the 5th strike, Ju Qi had arrived. The Empress Dowager lifted her gaze, her authority trapping him like an impenetrable wall. He knelt down. "Your son begs for your Majesty's mercy." 50 strokes. Ruja is frail. It could cost her life. "Mother." The Empress Dowager glanced at me, then looked at him coldly again. "What does this have to do with me? You saved your noble consort Jor, while I punished the former court's consort Shun. Noble consort Jor's favor is her own fortune, and consort Shun's defiance by fleeing the imperial mausoleum is her own fault. Well, your Majesty, is there anything else you haven't made clear?" Ju Qi glanced at me, as if pleading for me to share his burden. Understanding his intention, I played my role unhurriedly and spoke. "Your Majesty, the Taoist temple is a place of hardship. It's not impossible that Consort Shun has passed away. Since noble consort Jor is already your Majesty's consort, why not punish her lightly as a warning? Let her copy Buddhist sutras to pray for blessings for you for 3 months. How about that?" Upon hearing this, the Empress Dowager, while twirling her prayer beads, said, "The Empress is indeed thoughtful. It is crucial that you two, as husband and wife, are of one mind. Your Majesty, you must also exercise discretion. Such matters should not always require others to cover up for you. What kind of example does that set?" With that, she departed. Ju Qi hurriedly went to help his beloved up. As he passed by me, he tossed out a remark: "I hope there won't be a next time. Handle the follow-up matters as well." "Consider it an apology to Rongjia." I bowed slightly, feigning a submissive demeanor. "Apologize? Is she even worthy?" Although the current Empress Dowager is Ju Qi's birth mother, they are quite distant. After the former Empress passed away, Consort WN enjoyed immense favor for over a decade. Her maternal family was the WN clan of Linen, with Consort Wan's father being the current Prime Minister WNG, whose disciples and protégés were spread throughout the court and beyond. For instance, the Minister of Revenue Song Yu, and the Vice Minister of War Zhao Shou. At that time, Consort WN, who had been favored for over a decade without conceiving, suddenly became pregnant, making her even more influential and prominent. Everyone assumed that once Consort WN gave birth to a prince, she would ascend to the position of empress. However, one day the emperor brought back a commoner woman who was already pregnant. That woman was the current Empress Dowager Hua Yun, once favored. She soared to the highest branch. Hua Yun unexpectedly became the second imperial consort after Consort WN, and together they managed the 6 palaces, acting on behalf of the empress. The voices of impeachment were blocked outside the high walls. Coincidentally, both imperial consorts gave birth on the same day, each delivering a prince. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau declared it a heavenly blessing, a sign of divine favor upon southern Ju. Consort WN doted on her child excessively. while consort Hua showed no concern for hers, seemingly unwilling to even feign the appearance of maternal affection. From then on, the two engaged in constant covert and overt struggles, until one day the late emperor personally caught consort Wn and a guard lying together on the couch. The late emperor was furious, but consort Wn insisted that she had been framed, swearing to heaven that she had never betrayed him, and even offered to have her child and the emperor undergo a blood test to prove paternity. Seeing the two drops of blood fail to merge, consort Wn was utterly devastated and, overwhelmed by rage and despair, went completely mad. The story ended with one becoming a madwoman confined to the cold palace, and the other ascending to become the Empress Dowager, revered by all. At that time, still a noble consort, Hua Yun saved the 7th Prince Ju Yi, son of Lady Wn. Many suspected that Hua Yun had tampered with the blood test for paternity that year. Even the late emperor believed so, which is why he never pursued the matter regarding Ju Yi. Thus, Ju Yi became Ju Qi's greatest rival in the court. After Ju Qi became the crown prince, he exhausted all his efforts, even dreaming that Ju Yi was trying to seize his throne. After the Battle of Kaiyun, it wasn't long before the entire Wn family was executed overnight, charged with plotting a rebellion. When a half-embroidered dragon robe was found in the secret chamber of the Wn family's study, although the 7th Prince Ju Yi claimed to know nothing about it, Crown Prince Ju Qi, in front of everyone, shot an arrow through the 7th Prince's chest. The late emperor was furious and imprisoned Ju Qi in the imperial clan court. Not half a year later, the late emperor fell seriously ill. Consort Hua briefly held power, wielding it with an iron fist to remove a group of officials who had been loyal to the Wn faction, while vigorously promoting and nurturing talents from humble backgrounds. At that time, rumors were rampant that consort Hua intended to ascend the throne. With the late emperor's heirs dwindling, he had no choice but to issue an edict pardoning Ju Qi. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau also submitted a memorial stating that a woman surnamed Song possessed a fate that could greatly assist in balancing yin and yang to prolong life. This woman was none other than the then highly prominent Song Ruja. Later, with my planning, Ju Qi successfully ascended to the throne. There were rumors that when the late emperor passed away, he issued 2 decrees, one to pass the throne to Ju Qi, and the other to eliminate the mother and keep the child. He ordered consort Hua to be buried with him, but she bribed a eunuch close to the late emperor and narrowly escaped death. The other decree also vanished without a trace. No matter the truth, consort Hua, now the Empress Dowager, and Ju Qi would never be on the same side. So when the Empress Dowager ordered Song Ruja to be caned, it appeared to be standing up for me, but in reality, it was to ensure she could stay in the palace smoothly, after Ju Qi arrived in time. I have been harboring doubts, carefully guarding against every hidden malice. In the evening, Ju Qi came to Fengyi Palace. Ju Qi placed a bowl of almond milk in front of me. I looked up at him and said, "Your Majesty, have you forgotten? Once, I accidentally ate my brother's almond cake and broke out in a rash that very night. It took me half a month to recover." Ju Qi pretended to have a sudden realization. "I forgot. Someone, the Empress cannot eat almonds. Why was this almond milk served?" I remained seated, thinking to myself, he doesn't believe me. After a long pause, I slowly spoke. "The servants knew your Majesty was coming and were happy for me. I know you enjoy almond milk, so I specially went to consort Jiagui to ask for the recipe to make it." Upon hearing the name consort Jiagui, Ju Qi waved his hand to dismiss the servants. When only the 2 of us were left in the room, he lowered his voice and said, "I've told you. We can't move against her yet." I casually picked up some food with my chopsticks. "If she comes looking for trouble with me, don't blame me for not holding back. She is to me." I cut him off. "She has a history with you, but not with me." A fierce expression suddenly appeared on my face, and Ju Qi immediately slammed down his chopsticks. He paced over to stand behind me, his breath hissing like a venomous snake beside my ear. "Anan, you must remember. We are husband and wife, we rise and fall together. Others may be excused, but Song Ruja, I want her to live." I curled my lips into a smile. "Of course, I remember, otherwise, I wouldn't have schemed so much for your highness back then. Isn't that right?" He suddenly grabbed my neck. "Then, Empress, tell me, what did the Empress Dowager promise you? Or has that half of the tiger tally already fallen into her hands?" Struggling, I drew his sword with a backhanded motion and pressed it against his neck. Still smiling, she spoke, "Your Majesty jests. It is you and the Empress Dowager who share the bond of blood as mother and son. As for the tiger tally, I have long said it was hidden in a place no one could find. We, husband and wife, rise and fall together. With a clatter, the sword fell to the ground, and I gasped for breath. Ju Qi glanced at me, who had collapsed on the ground, and turned away in disdain. The tiger tally. It was the tiger tally of the Murong Iron Cavalry. The Murong family had guarded the border for generations, holding immense prestige in the military. The Murong Iron Cavalry is the elite force honed by the Murong family through generations. The Murong Iron Cavalry only recognizes the tiger tally and the Murong clan member who holds it. The imperial court naturally wanted to remove this thorn in their eye, but aside from the Murong Iron Cavalry, what other troops did the court have that were actually usable? The Imperial Guard might be usable. But would you dare send a dog from your own doorstep to hunt wolves? I fear that instead of killing the wolf, we might end up inviting other tigers and leopards. Moreover, Murong-He handed half of the military tally to the late emperor. Half a military tally bought the Murong family a shackle around their necks called loyalty and patriotism, and now, I hold the Murong family's half of the military tally, standing against them as an equal, the countless bones left after the Battle of Kaiyun, along with the Murong Iron Cavalry, have won me the opportunity to contend for the world. I will seek justice for all the wronged souls of the Battle of Kaiyun. Within 3 days, the news of Ju Qi storming out of my palace had spread throughout the 6 palaces, so when Song Ruja came to my palace to flaunt her power, I was not surprised. Holding a cup of tea, she spoke with a beaming smile. Your Majesty, you wouldn't believe it. But His Majesty tells me amusing stories from his childhood every single day. They're truly delightful. Seeing that I remained silent, she feigned nonchalance and remarked, "Oh, Your Majesty, this tea seems to be an old batch. Perfect timing. His Majesty has gifted me a fresh tribute of Longjing tea harvested before the rains. I'll bring some for you to taste another day. Stale tea never quite compares to the fragrance of the new." I smiled faintly. And the matron beside me casually replied, "Noble consort Jiao, you jest. Those old tales are something His Majesty loves to share with others, even I've heard them several times. As for the tea, Longjing before the rains hasn't been delivered for months, ever since the palace began cutting back on expenses. As for what's in your palace, it's also old tea." Her expression shifted repeatedly. "Who do you think you are? How dare a servant speak when her betters are talking? Get down and slap your mouth at once." The nanny replied with utmost respect, "I am the Emperor's wet nurse, sent by the Empress Dowager to deliver items to Her Majesty the Empress. My health is poor, and just yesterday the Emperor sent someone to inquire after me. I beg Lady Jiaojiaoyi to grant me some consideration and spare me this punishment." Song Ruja twisted her handkerchief in her hands, finally excusing herself by saying she had other matters to attend to. She gritted her teeth, performed a curtsy, and left. Within 2 days, the news of Lady Jiao Guipin storming out of my palace in anger had spread throughout the entire imperial harem. Look, they truly are a perfect match for each other. A month later, Ju Qi actually slapped Song Ruja in public. The two had a huge argument, and Ju Qi directly placed her under house arrest. It is said that Ju Qi discovered that Song Ruja had been deceiving him all along, that paper wrapping the fire was finally torn open, leaving a gap wide enough for the wind to rush in. It was nothing more than the fact that at that time, Hua and WN were openly and covertly competing. Ju Qi lived as if treading on thin ice in his youth, not as favored as Ju Yi. When he was bullied, consort Hua did not stand up for him. Perhaps it was then that Ju Qi came to the realization that his mother did not love him. The subordinates took cues from their master's attitude, so he inevitably led a miserable life. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Ju Qi was placed under house arrest due to the schemes of consort WN and her son. Everywhere was filled with the joy of singing orioles and dancing swallows, yet Ju Qi was left alone with an empty stomach. But at that moment, a young woman brought him a small plate of pastries. At the time, Ju Qi did not know who she was, only remembering that the woman carried the scent of plum blossoms. Later, Ju Qi never saw that woman again. The late emperor might have truly loved consort Hua, disregarding the opposition of his ministers and directly appointing Ju Qi as the crown prince. Yet Ju Qi himself knew well that his mother did not love him, and he had to plan for his own future. Thus, the affections of his youth were buried deep in his heart, and he patiently, step by step, drew closer to Song Ruja and other noble daughters from prominent families for the sake of his grand scheme. Song Ruja discovered Ju Qi's fondness for plum blossoms and catered to his preference, making Ju Qi grow even more fervent toward her. Ju Qi had deceived for so long that even he began to believe he had truly fallen in love with Song Ruja. Banished to Chaoyang, a journey of 8,000 li, Ju Qi, in a moment of carelessness, was thrown into the imperial clan court, where his food and living conditions were worse than those of the palace servants, that girl came again. From time to time, she would pass things to Ju Qi through a dog hole in the corner of the imperial clan court's wall. She would also tell him about things outside the palace, urging him to move forward and live positively, and so on. Once, Ju Qi noticed a small plum blossom on the hand she used to pass things through. He suddenly grasped the plum blossom and asked her, "It was you in our childhood, wasn't it?" The woman said nothing, only withdrew her hand and left. When she came again later, she never spoke another word. That plum blossom, planted in their youth, eventually grew into a blazing wildfire. After Ju Qi left the imperial clan court, the image of that plum blossom remained etched in his heart. He searched tirelessly but found nothing, until he discovered the plum blossom on Song Ruja's wrist. Though Ju Qi had his doubts, when Song Ruja recounted their past word by word, he let his guard down completely. It was as if he truly intended to spend his life with her. And her alone. At that time, Song Ruja's reputation for beauty was widespread throughout the capital, and their engagement seemed all but certain. But how could I let them have their way? The fire is already strong enough, it just needs a breath of the east wind. Afterwards, Song Ruja was summoned to the palace. But what if the affection that was found turned out to be all lies? From the very beginning, the woman who delivered the pastries during the Mid-Autumn Festival was indeed not Song Ruja. She was a palace maid from the Ime Garden, sent by Song Ruja to deliver the items. However, those items were actually gifts from consort Hua at the time. Song Ruja didn't want to eat them but didn't dare to throw them away, so she instructed a palace maid to give them to someone else. How dare a palace maid dispose of an imperial gift at will? After much toing and froing, it was given to the sixth prince, Ju Qi. At that time, later, the woman who delivered items to Ju Qi from the imperial clan court was not Song Ruja. That woman was Song Ruja's maid. Somehow, Ju Qi's past gentle and refined demeanor had stirred a sense of compassion in this maid. When delivering the items, I was caught red-handed by Song Ruja. Later, when Ju Qi gained power, Song Ruja recalled this incident, tortured the maid to extract the details, and then took her life. They thought these actions were hidden, but the palace maid in the plum garden had a nanny who cared deeply for her, and that nanny is now working in my palace, and Song Ruja's maid has a close friend, who is now a cleaning maid in my palace. I did nothing at all, merely had everyone in the palace learn from Song Ruja and paint a plum blossom on their wrists with cinnabar. Ju Qi, like his suspicious father, once the seed of doubt is planted, it will eventually grow into a towering tree. After Ju Qi discovered that the plum blossom on Song Ruja's wrist was fake, he naturally flew into a rage. But what does that have to do with me? These matters are not hard to investigate. To put it bluntly, Ju Qi himself simply didn't want to look into them. He could have sought justice for those two women, but he didn't. And yet he pretended to be deeply in love with Song Ruja. It's truly disgusting. 3 days later, Song Ruja's father, Song Yu, arrived. It's unclear what deal he struck with Ju Qi, but by evening, Song Ruja's house arrest was lifted. People in the palace said that Song Ruja had seen a ghost during her house arrest, suffered from hysteria, and became mentally disoriented. Upon hearing this, Ju Qi rushed to see her without delay. It seemed as if the two had returned to how they used to be, but a broken mirror is not so easily mended. No one truly cared about the facts. People only believe what they want to believe. Just like now, they are once again scrambling to serve in Song Ruja's palace. A month later, Ju Qi brought a pregnant woman into the palace, granting her the title of Ji Yu and the honorific name Wen. Truly worthy of being the late emperor's son, Ju Qi took meticulous care of the woman, and finally, Song Ruja could no longer sit still. She went to the cold palace. Now, the only one living in the cold palace is the former noble consort Wn, who was once second only to the emperor and above all others. Your servant begs for your highness's grace. Song Ruja knelt on the ground, speaking word by word. I beg your highness to grant me the medicine. When the scout I sent out came back with this report, I planted a question mark in my heart, though I didn't know what kind of medicine it was. I became more cautious in my daily life, until one day, a woman who claimed to be from consort Wen's side knelt at the entrance of my palace, saying, Your Majesty, please save my mistress. Noble consort Jiao sent her a bowl of medicine. My heart sank with alarm, but when I stepped out of the palace gate, the face I saw was that of a stranger. I grew up in the military since childhood, with a natural sharpness, and have identified no fewer than 100 spies for the Murong Iron Cavalry. My intuition tells me something is wrong with this matter. I put on an anxious expression, then accidentally stepped on Zuchuan's tail. Zuchuan bristled and leaped up, and I, appropriately startled, fainted as expected. Zuchuan is my cat, one that came from Chiyun. Before I fainted, I took note of the palace maid who came to deliver the message. Her brows were tightly furrowed, and her upturned phoenix eyes held a calculating glint. I remained unconscious for a full day. And it wasn't until the next day that I woke to find Juchi sitting by my bedside. I glanced around and feigned panic, grabbing his sleeve. Your Majesty, how is Consort Wen? How is she? Juchi looked at me with a complex expression and slowly said, fortunately, it ended without harm. But the palace maid claimed it was all tonic medicine. The imperial physician examined and confirmed it, but it was mixed with safflower. She said you instructed her to put it in. I opened my eyes wide in confusion. Your servant does not understand. If that palace maid was about to succeed, why would she come to ask me to intervene? Besides, I felt an instant connection with Consort when upon meeting her. How could I possibly harm her? Just then, Consort Wen entered, and Juchi hurried to support her. As soon as she came in, she burst into tears. Your Majesty, please see clearly. What kind of wicked person could devise such a sinister scheme? Thank goodness you're all right, sister. If I had caused you to suffer for no reason because of me, I would truly deserve to go to hell. I felt my eyes well up with tears at the right moment. Sister Wen, you mustn't speak such nonsense. You're pregnant and shouldn't say such things. Come, sit down. You're heavy with child. And after such an incident, it's really not good for you to be moving around too much. Juchi was about to say something when the imperial physician came to report that Song Ruja was pregnant. I could hardly suppress a laugh. Song Yu was clever all his life, yet his daughter turned out to be such a fool. While everyone was cautiously observing and currying favor with the newly entered consort Wen, she, on the contrary, took the initiative to deliver medicine and even sent someone to lure me over, even if her scheme to kill two birds with one stone was discovered. The imperial heir in her womb would still guarantee her life. Her father went to great lengths to get on Juchi's ship, yet she, as his daughter, insisted on jumping ship to collaborate with the WN family. Juchi frowned and immediately decided to go and see for himself. Consort Wen Jiyu beside him spoke up. Your Majesty, allow me to accompany you. Perhaps the matter of the medicine is just a misunderstanding. Juchi glanced at me and patted Wen Jiyu's face reassuringly. You stay here with the Empress for now. I'll go and see what's going on. Don't worry, I will surely bring you justice. Wen Jiyu nodded, watching as Juchi departed. After Juchi left, Wen Jiyu immediately put on a different expression. Miss, what should we do next? Yes, Consort Wen is my person. She is from Kaiyun, and both her father and brother died in that war. Her mother was killed with a single stab. And her only sister was violated to death by Juchi's personal soldiers. She was hiding in the cabinet at the time. When I found her, she was fighting with stray dogs for food at the Guanyin temple. At that time, she said, Miss, you say the gods and Buddhas always have their eyes open. But have they seen the suffering in this chaotic world? If they have seen it, why don't they save us? If they haven't seen it, then what use are their eyes? I told her, if the gods and Buddhas are useless, then why not just kill all the sins of this world? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I leaned back on the couch, carefully pondering the entire matter. From the very beginning, Juchi's plan was to use Song Rongjia to restrain me, and how much sincerity he truly had toward Song Rongjia remains unknown to anyone. However, one thing is certain, the aristocratic families, led by the Song clan, have now aligned themselves with Juchi, and the Empress Dowager likely has the same intention. Though her methods are far more sophisticated than Juchi's, outwardly feigning ignorance, it remains unknown how many of her people are actually in the court. What puzzles me the most is that Juchi and the Empress Dowager are clearly mother and son by blood, yet why are they so bitterly opposed? To the point of a life-and-death struggle. Back then, the WN family was eager to support the third prince, Ju Yi, to ascend the throne, so they had the then Vice Minister of Revenue, Song Yu, replace the original provisions with grain and fodder mixed with sand. On one hand, they could profit from it. Secondly, if the matter were exposed, he could shift the blame to the then Minister of Revenue, who was the Empress Dowager's ally. Thirdly, even if the battle were lost, it would at least make the Crown Prince suffer, if not remove him from power altogether. Song Yu, however, had his own plans. Outwardly, he followed the WN family's lead, but given the fate of Consort WN yesterday, the same might befall the WN family tomorrow, so he had his daughter engage with Juchi and informed him in advance about the substitution of provisions, thereby granting Juchi an enormous favor. Juchi was well aware that the provisions were problematic, yet he still brought them, allowing the entire Murong family to die in battle and countless people in the prefecture to starve to death. In the end, however, he managed to defeat the northern invaders. Why was Zhu Qi initially unwilling to send troops but later agreed to do so? Zhu Qi won with ease, while General Murong suffered repeated defeats. Despite clearly being the victorious side, he still had to cede half of the Kayunate prefectures. Why was the county guard Guiyang accused of treason and colluding with the enemy? What role did the Empress Dowager play in this? All these doubts lingered in my mind like dark clouds. A sudden sound interrupted my train of thought. The snowball knocked over the crystal tiger I had placed on the table. This was a gift I gave to consort when, tiger tally, my mind suddenly became clear. I dipped my finger in the tea and wrote the sequence of events on the table. The Murong family, loyal to the core, voluntarily handed over half of the tiger tally, but as long as the Murong Iron Cavalry remained loyal to the Murong family, the person on that throne would never feel at ease. Thus, the late emperor entrusted his most trusted son with the mission to aid Kaiyun, with the dual purpose of seamlessly ensuring the entire Murong clan perished in the chaos of war, and to secure the other half of the tiger tally. Therefore, Zhu Qi had no need to worry about issues with the provisions. Even if he knew that sand had been mixed into the grain supplies, he paid it no mind, and the reason the Murong clan, known for their bravery and prowess in battle, suffered repeated defeats could only be someone was leaking information to Beishur, confirming the act of treason and collusion with the enemy. Who was this person? No matter what, this person could not possibly be the county guard, Guiyang. If Guiyang were truly a traitor, given his relationship with the Murong family, he would have had countless opportunities to kill General Murong. Secondly, his body was hung outside the city wall on the second day of the Northern Shore invasion. The court's conviction was hastily made, almost as if they were trying to cover something up. Zhu Qi ultimately won the battle, but half of the Kayunate counties were still ceded. It was only after this that Zhu Qi's position as crown prince was completely secured. Given this, the significance of this war becomes rather ambiguous. Was it Huayun, or the late emperor? But no matter what, they never intended to let the people of the Kayunate counties survive. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, as if I could still smell the scent of blood from that time. Perhaps because Zhu Qi had visited her that day, Song Ruja remained restless even after becoming pregnant. Every few days, she would invite me to play chess or go for a stroll. I wasn't foolish either. I always had a physician on standby, just in case she tried to set me up. When consort heard me mention this matter, she laughed so hard she nearly toppled over, clapping her hands as she said, "Miss, what if I go find her and give her a taste of her own medicine?" I grew serious. "No, you can't joke about your own well-being. Besides, Song Ruja doesn't have the ability to frame me. I also don't believe that there could truly be a mother in this world who doesn't love her own child." Consort was taken aback for a moment, then replied obediently, "I understand. But, miss, you know how I feel. I harbor nothing but hatred for Zhu Qi. There's no way I would ever want this child to come into this world." This time, it was my turn to be stunned. I rubbed my wrist, narrowing my eyes. "What did you just say?" Consort said cautiously. "I harbor nothing but hatred for Zhu Qi, so I do not wish for this child to come into this world. If the child is stillborn, what will you do then?" Every time I see him, I will be reminded of these days of forcing smiles and enduring humiliation for the sake of an enemy. "Miss, do you mean?" Consort exclaimed in shock. Indeed, the consort of today is the Huayun of yesterday. That's why she paid no attention to Zhu Qi, and even when the late emperor was on his deathbed, she wanted to eliminate the mother and keep the child. No, that's not right. Huayun paid no attention to her own child, so why would she show mercy to Wan's child and even adopt him? My inner speculation began to feel increasingly absurd. I looked up at consort and urged her to be extremely careful in her actions, and I already had an idea in my mind. The only way to find out about what happened back then was to ask the one in the cold palace. A bleak wind whistled through the peeling palace gate, and the overgrown courtyard was lifeless and still. It was already late summer. Yet the cold palace exuded a chilling coldness. I reached out and pushed open the door before me. Stepping inside, there was not a soul in the room. It could hardly be described as anything but desolate. I walked around the tattered screen and found Wensha behind the dusty, cobweb-covered curtains. She was holding a large bronze mirror, dressed in what looked like theatrical robes, equally worn and ragged. Her hair was disheveled, and she seemed to have lost an eye, with her eyelid drooping, yet one could still faintly make out the stunning beauty she once possessed. She was humming softly, and as I leaned in to listen, I could make out the words she was singing. "He taught me to let go of lingering regrets, to avoid coy complaints, to renew myself, to change my temperament, to cease clinging to the past, to turn back from the sea of suffering, and to awaken early to the cause of the orchid. This was from the locked phoenix casket before I could ask. There seemed to be a noise at the door. I straightened up and was about to leave when Lady Dublin suddenly raised her voice. To suffer such poverty, my child. As I left, I noticed the new grass at the entrance of the cold palace was trampled and messy, clearly having been stepped on. The gloomy sky loomed over this opulent man-eating beast, oppressively dark and suffocating. I had just returned to He Palace when the Empress Dowager sent someone to summon me. Saying she had matters to inquire about, it seemed the person keeping watch at the cold palace earlier was most likely sent by the Empress Dowager. On the way to He Palace, I looked up at the nearly overhead dark clouds, suppressing the lingering irritation in my heart, and specifically ordered the Phoenix carriage to pass by Pinglayuan, where Song Ruja resided. Song Ruja's eyes seemed to blaze with fire as she looked at me. I was in high spirits. Wasn't Song Yu most protective of this daughter of his? Then I would deliberately trample his treasure into the mud and grind it to dust. In the He Palace, the Empress Dowager was painting. Seeing me arrive, she beckoned me over. I walked closer to take a look. It was a painting of a fishing scene. The Empress Dowager set down her brush, carefully stamped her seal, and picked up the painting to examine it closely. Anna, what do you think of this painting, Your Majesty? I know little about painting, but I feel this piece carries a profound artistic conception. The Empress Dowager smiled meaningfully and said, Then do you think the fisherman in this painting can catch his prey? I smiled and replied, That depends on what the prey is and whether the fisherman can act in accordance with the times. The Empress Dowager lit the painting with a nearby candle and spoke again. Anna, how do you think I compare to this fisherman? I bowed and said, Your Majesty is far-sighted and no ordinary person. The Empress Dowager dismissed her attendants. You are a clever person, and I won't beat around the bush with you. You've seen the situation of the WN family. I want to know what you've discovered. I cautiously replied, These are merely matters of the past. However, I have a question for Your Majesty. It is said that parents who love their children plan for their long-term future. Why is it that you, regarding His Majesty? The Empress Dowager coldly raised her eyes and cut me off. It's nothing. A life that was never expected to be born does not deserve any extra affection from me. I can also tell you that I hate the Ju family, so we share a common enemy. I understand, but if that's the case, wasn't it you who planned for Ju Qi to become the crown prince back then? The Empress Dowager shifted her gaze away in disgust, her fingers brushing over the seal she had just used. Just as I thought she wouldn't explain, I heard her let out a very soft sigh. Let me tell you a story, one about my own story. I was born in Baishaor and fled to Nanju, but only to the border region between the two countries. 800 miles to the west lies the 8 prefectures of Kaiyun. After my parents passed away, I began to travel throughout Nanju. Eventually, I settled in the capital and married a storyteller. Perhaps fate couldn't bear to see me happy. For a sudden change occurred. My husband brought home an injured man, dressed in fine clothes and covered in bloodstains. My in-laws took great care of him. I prepared medicine and cooked for him, and he gradually recovered. Later, on a rainy night, he forced himself upon me. I wanted to report it to the authorities. But that very night, his men slaughtered my husband's entire family. In the main hall, the head of the household offered fine wine, only to be repaid with betrayal. He took me back to the imperial palace, and only then did I realize he was the emperor, standing above all others. Although I had roughly guessed the truth, hearing the Empress Dowager speak it aloud still chilled my heart. The Empress Dowager let out a cold laugh. This cage trapped me. I begged for death several times. But the imperial physician told me I was pregnant. At that time, I still held a sliver of hope. Could this child be my husband's? So the moment I saw Ju Qi, my heart was filled with hatred. Why was he ever born? He and that beast are practically carved from the same mold, so I want the Ju family to perish. Now, do you understand? A bolt of lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the Empress Dowager's fierce face. A timely clap of thunder sounded outside. The rain had finally begun to fall. I agreed to the Empress Dowager's proposal of cooperation. Though it was called cooperation, in truth, I merely promised not to interfere in the conflicts between them. I declined the attendant's offer to carry my sedan chair or hold an umbrella for me, choosing instead to walk alone slowly in the rain. Everything seemed to blur in the curtain of rain. But can this rain truly wash away all the greed and sin in this world? By the time I returned to He Palace, Consort Wen was already waiting. She was startled to see me drenched from head to toe. What happened, miss? I closed my eyes and asked her, "What is it?" She instructed the servants to prepare hot water for bathing and clean clothes. She tried to wipe my face with a handkerchief, but I subtly avoided her. "Miss, Song Ruja's pregnancy is fake." I turned to look at her, signaling for her to continue. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, "My maid saw someone from Pinglayuan going to the Imperial Hospital to get a prescription to stop bleeding. Not only that, but there's a faint smell of moxa burning in her palace." I understood immediately and asked her, "Does anyone else know about this?" "No one else has been told, so only your maid saw it." She paused for a moment, then nodded. I raised an eyebrow. "Go back and investigate that maid of yours," she spoke cautiously. "What about her pregnancy? I have my own arrangements." The rumor of Song Ruja's fake pregnancy spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the 6 palaces overnight. Even during court sessions, old ministers subtly advised Ju Qi to cleanse the imperial havens. I heard that Song Yu was furious, and that very day, Lady Song sent a request to enter the palace. From that day on, she claimed she needed to rest for her pregnancy and stopped going out. Within 3 days, these rumors completely disappeared, just as I expected. Song Rongjia was indeed pregnant. It's just that her entry into the palace was never legitimate to begin with, and she knew full well how many eyes from every hall and courtyard were fixed on her belly, whether she burned mugwort or visited the imperial hospital. It was all to signal to everyone that she was losing this child. Of course, if she could use this child to bring down Consort Wen or even me, that would be even better. She bribed someone close to Consort Wen precisely to make her take action. But Song Ruja herself was determined to bet on this child. Wouldn't it be better to give birth to him? The only explanation is that there's something wrong with this child. Even Song Yu was alarmed, which shows the problem is not small. Thinking of this, I picked up the tea on the table, took a sip, and gazed at the fine rain outside the window, murmuring to myself, "This rain is really long." Before long, Ju Qi arrived with a damp aura, his ghostly pale face etched with sorrow and despair. I frowned, but before I could speak, he pulled me into a tight embrace. I barely suppressed the urge to kill him and asked, "What's wrong?" He buried his face in my shoulder. "Anan, you're all I have left." I resolutely pushed him away. What on earth happened? Ju Qi's eyes were red-rimmed. I thought that if I did well enough, Mother Empress would spare me a glance. Even just one would be enough. I helped her overthrow that vile woman Wn, but Mother Empress would rather patiently coax that bastard Ju Yi to sleep than look at me. So I killed that bastard with my own hands. Now I have taken this position. And I even burned Father Emperor's edict to keep the child and discard the mother. But do you know what she said? I remained silent, just watching him coldly. He met my gaze, as if stung by the chill in my eyes, and suddenly grabbed my neck, she stared at me with the same look, saying, "The Ju family deserves to go to hell." Ha, how ridiculous. She pursued wealth and followed the emperor. Yet now she tells me she hates the Ju family. Without the Jews, she would be nothing. The moment he grabbed my neck, I pulled the hairpin from my head and pressed it against his throat. A trickle of crimson flowed down, yet he seemed to feel no pain, his eyes filled with madness. I struggled to speak. "You deserve to go to hell." He flung me away, and I lay on the couch gasping for breath, forcing out a faint smile as I repeated word by word, "Your mother was right, all of you Jews deserve to go to hell." He looked at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Hesitating to speak, I let out a cold laugh. "You should really ask your father what despicable means he used to win your mother, and you still foolishly believe your mother loved you. It was already an act of mercy that your mother didn't strangle you at birth." Ju Qi was frightened by my words, and he shouted angrily, "What do you know?" I told him exactly what the Empress Dowager had told me. I stared at him, not missing a single expression on his face, my expression growing increasingly mocking. After hearing this, Ju Qi was both shocked and terrified, muttering impossible under his breath as he took a step back and collapsed to the ground. I stood up, looking down at him from above. "Now, can you answer my question?" Ju Qi's gaze was vacant, his face ashen. "What do you want to know?" "I want to know, who is helping you plan for the crown prince position? Or rather, what benefits did you promise the WN family? That made WNG help you instead of his own grandson. When you turned against the WN clan, you clearly offended them deeply, yet they still supported your ascension to the throne. The Song clan's mediation alone wouldn't have been enough. What else could it be? If the clan doesn't rely on me, should they rely on that bastard Ju Yi instead? Back then, the Empress Dowager pleading for Ju Yi's mercy was already giving the WN clan face. I suppose the WN clan was repaying that favor. It's a pity I ended up killing him with my own hands. Juchi calmed down and said dismissively. I let out a cold laugh. Juchi, are you really completely unaware? Then why did you come here today? Surely it couldn't be to come crying to me about being a pitiful child unloved by mother or father, begging me to show you more affection, could it? The vulnerability on Juchi's face vanished, replaced by mockery. Anan is still clever, but what should I call you? Murongan or Wei Pingting? My heart skipped a beat, and my face darkened. She's dead, you even killed her fiancé. If I were her, I would have long wished to tear your flesh apart and cut you into 1,000 pieces. I've told you before, don't bring up my past again. My mind was clear as a mirror. His sudden mention of my past must mean someone had told him something. He stood up, took my hand, and gently rubbed my reddened knuckles from gripping the hairpin too tightly. Anan, I was just joking. The bond between you and me is naturally incomparable to anyone else. What if I asked you to kill Song Ruja? Sure. A foolish woman who seeks fame and reputation. Killing her is no big deal. No one matters more than you. He said it so casually, as if the person who threatened me not to lay a finger on Song Ruja a few months ago wasn't him at all. I looked at his hypocritical face, withdrew my hand, and felt nothing but disgust. We stood facing each other like this, neither of us speaking. After a long while, I heard him say, Anan, we rise and fall together. The rain had been drizzling for nearly half a month, and it still showed no sign of stopping. In the blink of an eye, Juchi's birthday arrived, and the palace specially invited an opera troupe. Inside the hall, singing and dancing filled the air with peace and prosperity. I excused myself to get some fresh air and passed by the side hall, overhearing a conversation inside. Master, are we still performing that play The Case of Judge Bao today? It turned out to be a young apprentice from the opera troupe. I smiled wryly, thinking that if Judge Bao were still around, the world might be a slightly better place. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a stern voice scolding. Remember this, there's a time and place for everything. That opera, was it fit to be performed in the palace? Frowning, I pushed open the door and entered the side hall. The troop leader, seeing it was me, hurriedly led the others in bowing to me. I asked, may I ask which play from the cases of Judge Bao are you most skilled in? The young apprentice nearby hurriedly replied, Your Majesty, it's the final act, The Cat for a Prince from Executing Guo Huai. My master performs it best. In an instant, everything became clear to me. When I returned to the banquet, Juchi asked me where I had been. I replied, I was preparing a gift for Your Majesty. Juchi raised an eyebrow at me. After a while, the opera troupe came on stage. Performing Mu Guiying Takes Command. After the performance, I spoke up. I've heard they also perform another opera quite well, and I've already instructed the troop leader to prepare it. Let it begin. As soon as the young apprentice playing Emperor Zhenzong of Song appeared on stage, Juchi stared at me as if he wanted to kill me. When the actor playing Guo Huai uttered the line, This servant has come up with a plan to swap the babies, Juchi could no longer remain seated. He slammed his cup and shouted angrily, Enough, who told you to perform this? I smiled brightly. Your consort only wished to bring Your Majesty joy. Have I done something wrong? In front of the court officials, Juchi helped me to my feet. After a long moment, he clapped his hands and laughed heartily. Well sung. Keep going. On stage, Guo Huai's voice rang out again. If the wicked consort bears a bastard child. Below the stage, Juchi gripped my wrist, as if he wished he could just snap my hand off. In the evening, as the banquet dispersed, Juchi practically dragged me into the Phoenix Palace. He was furious. Murongan, do you really think I don't dare to kill you? I rubbed my sore wrist, which he had gripped tightly, and replied, I merely arranged a play. What is the matter, Your Majesty? Juchi pinched the bridge of his nose and said, So what are you trying to tell me with this play? That I am not the Empress Dowager's son. And the one in the cold palace is my real mother. I said nothing of the sort. No matter what you have found out, I tell you, it's impossible. With that, he turned and left in a huff. Outside, the rain was pouring down. The next day, the Empress Dowager summoned me. She sat upright on the high seat, looking utterly haggard and completely devoid of the imposing presence she had the last time. Seeing me arrive, she pulled me to sit down and asked, What have you found out? I withdrew my hand, looked at this broken woman before me, and said, It was just speculation yesterday. But this morning I found out that the midwife the WN family bribed back then died suddenly at the third watch today. How could I not recognize my own child? How could I not recognize my own child? She said hoarsely. But you weren't looking forward to his birth, so you didn't care who that child was. Am I wrong? I said calmly. No, that's not true, like an enraged lion. She hurled the objects in front of her at me with a crashing noise. That's my child. How could I not love my own child? I raised my voice. You don't love him. In the past, you thought Ju-Chi was your child, so you never poured an ounce of affection into him. Now that you know Ju-Chi is not your child, and you're still putting on this act, you're truly pathetic. You can't even recognize your own child. She grabbed the seal on the table and threw it at me, hitting my forehead. Blood immediately gushed out. I walked toward her step by step, like a vengeful ghost. With a cold smile, I leaned in close and said, "You don't love anyone, you only love yourself. It's you who is heartless and cold-blooded, cruel and selfish." I lowered my voice. "When you personally crushed Jingting to death back then, why did you never think that he was also someone else's child? You and the Ju family are the same, you both deserve to go to hell." Her eyes widened in terror as she watched me bow to her. "Your son respectfully sends Her Majesty the Empress on her final journey." Ju-Chi, who had emerged from nowhere, ended her life with a single sword strike. Ju-Chi threw down the sword in disgust and looked at me, saying, "What did you just say to her?" I didn't answer and turned to leave. Outside the hall, the rain continued to fall drearily. I went straight to the cold palace. She sang with her lips. "I have seen the golden orioles sing at dawn in the jade halls of Jinling, and the flowers bloom early by the Qinhuai waterside pavilions. Who knew they would vanish as easily as melting ice? I watched him build his crimson towers. I watched him feast his guests. I watched his towers collapse. In these moss-covered green-tiled ruins, I once slept in the lap of luxury, and have now witnessed 50 years of rise and fall to my fill." I looked at her coldly and said, "Your Majesty is truly a master schemer, but I must thank you for your plotting, which allowed me to rid myself of the Empress Dowager." She was still holding that bronze mirror in a daze. "You probably didn't know the truth back then. When did it start? From the moment you were framed for adultery." Seeing that she still showed no reaction, I continued on my own. "After the blood test back then revealed that Ju-Yi was not of royal blood. You sensed something was wrong and feigned madness to enter the cold palace. You couldn't understand how the child you had raised for so many years could belong to someone else. Then your father, WNG, informed you that after years of infertility, you had suddenly conceived due to taking potent medicine. Fearing the child might be at risk, and worried that Huayun might give birth to a prince before you, even with the WN family's prominent status. You couldn't gamble on the emperor's unpredictable favor, so your father bribed the midwife and arranged in advance to swap the two children. Of course, all of this was kept hidden from you. Who would have thought that Ju-Chi, your biological son, would survive? Just as your father was about to tell you the truth, you were framed, and only then did your father realize that this very move from years ago had harmed you. To make amends, you proposed helping Ju-Chi ascend to the position of crown prince. For your sake and for the glory of the WN family, you personally handed the knife to Ju-Chi. As your devoted son, Ju-Chi's first act upon becoming crown prince was to exterminate your entire WN family. His second was to kill Ju-Yi, the son you raised with your own hands. Perhaps you never loved Ju-Yi, but who can say for sure? Perhaps your father revealed Ju-Chi's true origins to the noble families before his death, which is why he ascended the throne so smoothly. Now that your own son has ascended the throne, you learned that I wanted to overthrow the Empress Dowager to reclaim that half of the tiger tally, so you schemed to let me know the truth. And in the end, I achieved my revenge. However, Ju-Chi still believes to this day that it was because he wasn't good enough that Huayun didn't love him as a son. This secret that the whole world tacitly understands, are you sure you still want to keep it from him?" She picked up the bronze mirror, her gaze clearing as she replied, "I just haven't figured out how to face him. After all, he killed Ye, whom I raised with my own hands." Ju-Chi entered the doorway just in time, his expression sorrowful. "So my very existence is a mistake, is that it, my mother?" He practically spat out the last few words through gritted teeth. WN remained silent, not looking at him, instead gazing into the mirror as she caressed her own face. It was a long while before she finally spoke. "I have already helped you ascend to the throne. You are being far too greedy." I clapped my hands mockingly and said, "What a magnificent display of motherly love." She suddenly flung the bronze mirror to the ground, her frenzied appearance strikingly similar to that of Ju-Chi beside her. "What do you know? How could that venomous woman Huayun ever outmatch me? Who has been navigating aristocratic circles since childhood? If it weren't for my father's foolish actions back then, the one laughing last should have been me. But she is dead now after all, so I still won in the end. As for you, after learning that you are my son, I did my utmost to persuade my father to help you rise to power. You got what you wanted, didn't you? What about me? What am I? Just a tool for you to outshine Huayun, is that it?" Ju-Chi nearly roared. Then Ju Qi grabbed her by the neck and strangled her to death with his own hands. After that day, Ju Qi announced to the public that the Empress Dowager had died of a sudden illness, and citing the pressures of state affairs, he held the funeral for only 3 days. Ju Qi came to my palace more and more often, even refusing to see Consort Wen and Song Ruja when they came to seek an audience. He said, "It's still more comforting to stay here with Anan." When he said this, there was no warmth in his eyes. I knew I had to hurry. Days of continuous rain had caused varying degrees of flooding in various regions. Ju Qi sent people to provide disaster relief, but the response was that the national treasury was empty and there was simply no grain to distribute. Before long, uprisings broke out in various regions. The news that reached the capital was that the people had discovered the relief grain was full of sand and gravel. If the court couldn't fill their stomachs, they would overthrow the court. Ju Qi came to my palace right after court, watching me embroider nearby. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Did you know about this?" I pretended to be confused. "What?" He walked over, took the needle and thread from my hand, tossed them aside, and we just looked at each other, neither of us speaking. After a long while, he finally turned and left. Come to think of it, Consort Wen hasn't visited in a long time either. When I arrived at the Changla Palace where Consort Wen resided, I could only hear the sounds of laughter and joy coming from inside. It was her and Ju Qi. She said, "Qi Lang, do you love me?" Ju Qi replied to her, "Of course, but why do you still keep the queen? I've told you everything I know about her schemes. Don't ask questions you shouldn't, remember." Then followed another round of intimate whispers between the loving couple. I had long suspected she would betray me. But when the moment came, it still took my breath away. The rain had stopped, but the rebellions across the land showed no sign of ceasing. Ju Qi, having no troops to deploy, remembered the tiger tally in my possession. I knew that once I handed over the tiger tally, I would surely meet my end. My life was more valuable alive than dead. I sipped the tea before me, watching Ju Qi slowly savor the almond soup, and said, "I've already told you, the tiger tally was taken by my elder brother. You'll find it on the corpse of Murong Qi, my brother. If you manage to retrieve it, do let me know. I'd like to offer him a stick of incense." He put down the bowl and left in a huff. This kind of conversation happened countless more times. Finally, with no other choice, he transferred a small portion of the imperial guards and began large-scale conscription among the common people. The suppression of the rebellion dragged on intermittently for several months, enduring the cold winter. And in the blink of an eye, it was early spring. Counting the days, it was about time for Song and Wen to give birth. When the day came, Song Rongjia went into labor first. Basin after basin of blood was poured out, yet the baby still hadn't been delivered. Not long after, Consort Wen also complained of unbearable abdominal pain. I turned to look at Ju Qi, his brow tightly furrowed. Perhaps the blows from the Wen family and Hua Yun had been too heavy for him. Today's situation was so similar to that of years past. I licked my dry lips, my eyes gleaming. How would Ju Qi react? I was incredibly eager to find out. A cry pierced the long night. Noble consort Jia had given birth. There was still no movement from the Palace of Eternal Joy. After about the time it takes for half a stick of incense to burn, the midwife came trembling to report, Your Majesty, Consort Wen has given birth to a stillborn child." Ju Qi stood stunned for a long moment. Then walked into the Pingleiwan courtyard, picked up a needle, pricked his own finger and that of Song Ruja's newborn child, and let the blood drip into a basin of water beside them. Watching the 2 drops of blood that refused to mix, Ju Qi was consumed by rage. He laughed bitterly, spat out a mouthful of blood, and in the end, he actually threw the child to its death. Beside him, Song Rongjia, who had just given birth, fainted at the sight. Ju Qi ordered the midwife to be thrown into prison, then turned and headed to Changle Palace. Consort Wen, upon learning that she had given birth to a stillborn child, had already cried herself into a state of utter despair. Ju Qi walked over to her, looking down at her coldly as he spoke. "The child you gave birth to wasn't stillborn. Your baby was swapped by Song Ruja." Before Wen Myren could feel a moment of joy, Ju Qi's next words plunged her into an icy abyss. Ju Qi said word by word, "That bastard of yours has already been killed by me. You must tell me who his father is, so I can send him down to accompany you and your child." Ju Qi ordered the execution of the entire Song family. It is said that from Song Yu's home, a full half a mountain of gold was confiscated. On the day Consort Wen was ordered to commit suicide, I went to see her one last time. She looked at me miserably and asked if I had planned everything from the start. Meticulously scheming ever since the play swapping the crown prince with a raccoon at Ju Qi's birthday banquet. I said, "No, I thought of all this from the moment I learned that both of you were pregnant." She laughed out loud. "Ha, so you started scheming against me that early, you know? I hate this calculating side of you the most, always acting so superior. You never really trusted me, did you? You really aren't worthy of my trust, are you?" I raised an eyebrow at her. I didn't confirm or deny it, not telling her that I had originally intended to add alum to the water. When the rebel army stormed in, I was painting a scene of someone fishing. Juchi rushed in with a sword. "Anan, run." Without looking up, I said to him, "Juchi. Who are you?" Once asked me if the fisherman in the painting could get what he wanted. I said it depends on whether the fisherman can go with the flow. She said she wanted to be the fisherman who reaps the benefits. "What about you?" Just then, the rebel leader charged in with his men and captured Juchi. Juchi spoke as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "So that's it, you are the fisherman." I handed the painting to the rebel leader. "No, I am the one who painted it. General, as you commanded, our people have entered the city. The entire palace, from top to bottom, is now under our control." The leader saluted me respectfully as he spoke. I nodded and ordered, "Do not allow them to harm the civilians. Then, proclaim this edict to the world." Juchi stared at the proclamation, and the soldier guarding him spoke solemnly. "Want to know? I'll read it to you. In the southern Zhou dynasty, there was an emperor named Qi, who was tyrannical and unprincipled. During his time as crown prince, he was violent and debauched. In the 36th year of Yuanli, during the Battle of Kaiyun, he delayed military operations, resulting in the deaths of generals Murong-He and Murong-Chi. He actively ceded 4 of the 8 Kaiyun prefectures. Colluding with the enemy and betraying the nation, he neglected his duties in escorting provisions, leading to countless deaths by starvation in Kaiyun. Later, he personally killed his own brother, harming his own kin. After ascending the throne, he forcibly married his stepmother. He then proceeded to kill his mother and his own son, indulging in pleasure, exhausting the people and squandering wealth. Even if all the bamboo of the southern mountains were used as writing slips, his crimes could not be fully recorded. This man, disloyal, unjust, unkind, unvirtuous, unfilial, unmerciful, and disrespectful, deserves to be condemned by heaven and earth. Today, our Murong Iron Cavalry, mandated by heaven, will punish the unrighteous and execute the tyrant. Let this proclamation be known throughout the land, so all may hear it. Did you understand?" Juchi forced a faint smile. "In that case, should I call you Murong or Wei Pingting?" I stared at him and said word by word, "I am Wei Pingting. As in thunder, remember that. And by the way, was the almond milk tasty?" Juchi's eyes widened, and he vomited another mouthful of blood. "I put a full dose of medicine in that almond milk. And I will personally send him to hell to meet my Archie." Holding Xue Tuan, I set off on the journey back. I came from Kaiyun, and now it's time to return there. I want to see my Archie one more time. Outside, the sun is shining brightly. The rain has finally stopped. In the 42nd year of Yuanli, the southern Jew perished. The second story, my fiancé returned from his travels with a woman. The woman was flamboyant and radiant. "So this is your fiancé? She does seem rather dull," he sneered. "How could she ever compare to you?" Shen Feibai had been traveling for 3 years and finally returned to the capital on the eve of our grand wedding. My mother took me to welcome him outside the city gate, but to our surprise, he sat arrogantly on his horse, holding a stunning woman in exotic attire in his arms. Without even glancing at me, he gave my mother a slight, indifferent nod, then spurred his horse and entered the city. My mother was furious, but I stopped her. The woman's silvery laughter drifted through the air. "Is this your fiancé? She does look rather dull." Shen Feibai let out a scornful chuckle, then leaned down to kiss her neck. "How could she ever compare to you? You know what's good? I am an eagle chasing the clouds and sun across the grasslands, not some timid, cowering rabbit you Han people raise in secluded chambers, knowing only how to depend on men for survival." They laughed heartily. A perfect match, trampling my dignity underfoot. Completely disregarding the years of friendship between our two families, the Shen and Xie families have been close friends for generations, and I was betrothed to Shen Feibai since childhood. Shen Feibai returned to the capital in high spirits with a foreign woman by his side. The news spread throughout Chang'an in less than half a day. 3 years ago, my father and elder brother tragically died on the battlefield, leaving me an orphan of the general's household. When people mention me, it is often with pity and regret. Thus, when I was so humiliated by my fiancé, the common people were actually indignant on my behalf. While I was out distributing porridge, I happened to run into that foreign woman named Wu Yina. She was dressed in purple gauze, revealing a slender waist. With a crescent-shaped scimitar hanging at her side, both heroic and stunning, truly a peerless beauty. Yet the next moment, she raised her whip and lashed it at an elderly man running a small stall outside the general's mansion, shouting angrily, "Shenlang and I are a match made in heaven. What is Xie Yuni compared to me? She isn't even worthy of carrying my shoes. You old fool, how dare you say I stole her destined marriage?" My eyes turned cold as I swiftly stepped forward, firmly grasping the whip she had swung with such force, and gave it a hard tug. Her pupils contracted sharply, unsteady. She stumbled forward 2 steps, nearly falling. She steadied herself, looking at me in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe that a rabbit raised deep in the boudoir like me could snatch the whip from her hand. "Do you know who I am? Return the whip that Shenlang found for me," she demanded imperiously. "Apologize." I helped the elderly woman up from the ground, pointing at the scattered fruits and vegetables, enunciating each word clearly. "Pick them up. She, an outsider, dares to openly bully our people on the Vermilion Bird Avenue of Chang'an. How utterly insolent." The surrounding citizens were filled with righteous anger, but fearing the authority of the Shen family, they dared not speak out, apologize. "Ha, this old hag dared to disrespect me. I should consider myself merciful for not tearing her to pieces." She arrogantly stomped on the fruits the old woman was selling, then lifted her leg disdainfully and kicked toward the elderly woman. Disgusting. I shielded the old man and, unable to bear it any longer, lashed my whip across her face. She dodged quickly, blocking with her arm, which was instantly marked with a bloody welt. Enraged, she drew the curved blade from her waist and swung it at me furiously. "How dare a lowly Han like you injure me? I'll cut off your head and throw it into the Han pit." Hearing the words Han pit, I nearly lost control of my killing intent. Shen Feibai rushed over from somewhere, holding her tightly, and glared at me angrily. "How could you be so vicious? How dare you hit her?" I threw the whip to him, my eyes red. Putting on the pitiful appearance of being betrayed and humiliated by my fiancé, I stubbornly met his gaze, holding back tears, and choked out an accusation. "Why do you only see me hitting her? Didn't you see her lay hands on the elderly?" He was so angry that he spoke without thinking. "He's just a commoner. How can he be compared to Wu Yina?" As soon as these words were spoken, the people around who were receiving the porridge and rice could no longer sit still. Shen Feibai and Wu Yina were surrounded by the crowd. With so many voices condemning them, the people nearly drowned them in a flood of spit. I wiped away the non-existent tears at the corner of my eye and helped the old man leave. If we didn't leave soon, I was afraid I would burst out laughing. Wu Yina screamed sharply, "I'll kill you lowlifes. I'll kill you all. Don't touch me." Shen Feibai roared furiously behind me. "I am the legitimate son of the Prime Minister. All of you, get lost." I paused in my steps and couldn't help but curse inwardly. Idiot. Early the next morning, Shen Feibai seemed to be under some kind of spell. Covered in whip marks, he took off his upper garment and knelt outside my general's mansion, bearing a bundle of thorns to apologize. I found it somewhat amusing to look at the bundle of thorns on his back. He stiffened his neck, not daring to look at me, his face and neck flushed red. It's rare to see him feel ashamed for once. His father, too ashamed, knelt down alongside him. I immediately supported him. Uncle Shen, with tears streaming down his face, said, "I have wronged your father and even more so the Xie family. The Xie family is full of loyal martyrs. 3 years ago, in the battle against the Uyghurs, all 17 sons of the Xie family died in battle, which is what secured the peace of Great Chu today. Yet I raised this unfilial son who has betrayed you." I fell silent. Uncle Shen repeatedly assured me that he would not allow Waina to enter the household. Shen Feibai also changed his previous attitude towards me, his tone becoming warm and affectionate, full of deep emotion. "I have no relationship with Wu Yina. She is a woman I saved during my travels, and I only regard her as a close confidant. If you mind, after we are married, I will never see her again." Nonsense. I couldn't be bothered to look at his hypocritical face any longer. In my heart, I calculated the time. The person I was waiting for should be arriving soon. Finally, as I had hoped, she came. Wu Yina, with red eyes, came running over with a boy and a girl. She cried out in a fit of emotion, "How dare you refuse to see me? If you don't see me, I'll die right here with the children." Uncle Shen trembled with rage. Shen Feibai didn't even bother to kneel anymore. He scrambled to his feet and grabbed her, lowering his voice to soothe her. "What kind of talk is this? I already told you it was just a temporary measure." Uncle Shen was hopping mad. As a scholar official of high integrity, his reputation was of utmost importance. Now, with the surrounding commoners gossiping non-stop, he felt as if needles were pricking his back. Humiliated, he roared in anger, if she wants to die, let her take these two bastards with her. You still haven't knelt to Uni, let go of her hand at once. If you have no shame, I still do. The people are all watching. Wu Yina glared at me hatefully. Xie Uni, I'll have you know, I've already given Shen Lang a medicine that will leave him childless. If you want to marry him, then don't even think about having any heirs for the rest of your life. With a look of grievance on my face, I spoke words that cut to the heart. Don't worry, sister, your children will be mine. In the future, as the head wife, I will naturally treat them well. Wu Yina, provoked by my words, rushed forward with reddened eyes, crying and threatening to kill me like a shrew, only to be firmly restrained by Shen Feibai, seizing the moment. I immediately fell to the ground as more and more onlookers gathered. I simply closed my eyes and pretended to faint outright. At this moment, silence speaks louder than words. My mother quickly picked me up with the help of her maidservant. As I had instructed her earlier, she spat in the faces of Shen Feibai and his father, crying and cursing. Bah, you ungrateful scoundrels. The Shen family bullies us just because all the men of the Xie family died on the battlefield. Preying on a widow and her orphaned daughter, you heartless wretches, may you die a miserable death. Shen Feibai and his father flushed with embarrassment and tried to placate my mother, but Wu Yina refused to be outdone, wailing loudly with her two children. What a farce indeed. I cracked open my eyes slightly to look at the furious crowd around me, then closed them again with satisfaction. What a show, and it's only just begun. After the Shen family found out that Shen Feibai had truly taken the sterilizing drug, they took Wu Yina's child back to care for him properly, completely forgetting the promise they made to me outside the general's residence. Mother was so angry that she smashed several fine antiques. Better to know now than to find out after marrying him. You grew up with him, aren't you upset? She asked, looking at me with concern. I tapped the horse piece on the chessboard, picked it up, and with a smile. Captured my mother's general. Checkmate. You can still laugh. His Majesty has summoned you to the palace tomorrow. Who would have thought that Wu Yina is actually a princess of the Yugas, sent here by decree for a marriage alliance? I gazed at the defeated piece in my hand under the sunlight streaming through the window, murmuring softly, "It's all right, mother. Your daughter isn't some delicate rabbit raised in a boudoir. I'm a vengeful spirit clawing my way back from hell." Heaven took pity on my suffering, allowing me to be reborn on the very day Shen Feibai entered the capital. How could I possibly repeat the tragedy of the Xie family's execution that befell us in my past life? Shen Feibai and I have known each other since we were young, childhood sweethearts. How could there be no love? I too once embroidered a wedding veil by the western window. I too once lost my soul over his words, unable to sleep through the night. But all of this turned to smoke and clouds when he colluded with Wu Yina to bring ruin upon my family. I would rather he had died on the road compiling the annals of mountains and rivers, died in the Han Chinese pits of the Uyghurs, died in the year I loved him most. Better that than 3 years ago when he betrayed our country, colluding with the enemy, and buried alive 17 of my Xie family's iron-willed young men. The youngest, 17th brother, was only 15. 3 years ago, when he set off for battle, he took my hand and gave me a bag of cane sugar. "Sis, this is sweet, I'll buy you more when I come back." But he never came back. All members of the Xie family, due to Shen Feibai's betrayal, perished without a trace. The heads of my father and brothers still hang on the banners above the Yuga Han mass grave, never returning to their homeland even in death. I harbor a deep-seated hatred in my heart. Only the blood from my enemy's neck can quench the burning resentment within me. On the day I entered the palace, Wu Yina deliberately waited for me outside the corner gate. She was a completely different person from the shrew she had been that day. Now, she was dressed in luxurious robes, dignified and elegant. She stood before me with a look of triumph in her eyes, looking down on me from a position of superiority. "Xie Yuni, you never expected this, did you? I am the princess, your master." She lifted my chin and looked down at me, curling her lips in disdain. "You Han people are so dull." Back on the grasslands, the captured Han women and children would only cry. When I threw them into the wolf packs, they didn't even dare to move. She stared playfully into my eyes, carefully observing my facial expressions, hoping to catch a glimpse of fear and terror. I met her gaze coldly, and she suddenly laughed, the crimson lipstick on her mouth glistening blood-red under the sunlight. The only interesting thing was, there was a mother who, to protect her child, refused to let go even as the wolves tore into her. TSK, how remarkable. Her smile deepened, brimming with delight. That mother was named Ju Shuyi. I heard your third sister-in-law is also called Ju Shuyi, isn't she? What a pity she couldn't even protect your nephew in the end. and he was torn apart and devoured by a pack of wolves. How utterly tragic. I glared at her coldly, my blood running cold. I couldn't help but recall, quite inappropriately, how in my past life she had been dismembered, limbs severed, turned into a human pig unable to live or die as she wished. It seems I was far too merciful. I should have thrown her into the wolf pack, letting her taste the bitterness of being devoured by beasts. Today's palace banquet was hosted by His Majesty to welcome Waina and the Uyghur envoys. He ordered me to attend the banquet, but his true intentions lay elsewhere. This journey is a trap set for me, and I am the intended prey. I gaze at the venerable sovereign seated high on the throne, now aged and frail, while the hatred in my heart ebbs and flows. My aunt is the empress, and the He family are the imperial relatives. Over these years, due to the emperor's suspicion, my father and brothers have relinquished much of their power, yet the emperor remains unsatisfied. But I never imagined that he could be so foolish as to instruct Shen Feibai to collude with the Uyghur general Wu Yasuo, plotting from within and without, all just to have a legitimate reason to trap and slaughter the sons of my He family on the battlefield, to eliminate loyal ministers. His Majesty did not hesitate to sacrifice the lives of the people in 3 cities, offering them up for Wu Yasuo to slaughter. My father and brothers fought desperately to the death, only to be pierced by countless arrows and perish. My dearest 17th brother, only 15 years old, chose to surrender to prevent the massacre of the people in the 4th city. He was tied behind Wu Yasuo's horse and dragged to his death. By now, the He family was almost completely wiped out. Yet he still refused to let it go. In my previous life, on this very day, he issued an edict forcing me to marry Shen Feibai. His intention was to have Shen Feibai, as the son-in-law of the He family, expose the family's alleged treason and collaboration with the enemy, in order to annihilate my entire clan. Those forged letters were all hidden in my boudoir by Shen Feibai. In my previous life, the He family was raided, my mother and younger brother were beheaded, and my 3rd sister was humiliated to death. Even though I eventually got my revenge, I ended up alone in the end. In this life, I will never repeat the same mistakes. Yun Yi and Feibai have both grown up before my eyes. I believe this marriage should take place this month. The same words as in my previous life echoed once more. Suppressing the hatred in my heart, I rose and walked to the center of the hall. With my back straight, I knelt down and spoke each word deliberately, uttering a statement completely opposite to what I had said in my past life. Your Majesty, I wish to break off my engagement to Shen Feibai, the 3rd son of the Shen family. If your Majesty does not grant this, I will hang myself at home to reunite with my father and brother in the underworld. After saying this, to show my determination, I kowtowed 3 times heavily until blood splattered. The atmosphere was deathly silent. None of the royal nobles invited to the banquet dared to speak. I knelt prostrate on the ground. In my previous life at this time, I didn't know that Wu Yina already had 2 children with Shen Feibai. Nor did I know that my father and brother's deaths were the work of Shen Feibai and His Majesty. That is why, when Shen Feibai knelt outside the general's mansion to apologize with a bundle of thorns on his back, explaining that he had nothing to do with Wu Yina, I believed him. Following the emperor's decree, I joyfully married the young master I had admired since my youth. After marriage, I managed all household affairs for him. I respected my in-laws above and managed the servants below. The inner chambers and rear courtyards were in perfect order, both inside and outside the capital. Everyone praised me, just so he could serve the people with peace of mind in his official career. Little did I know, he turned out to be a heartless and ungrateful wolf in sheep's clothing, marrying me only to slaughter my entire family. From the day I was reborn, I began to scheme, drawing Wu Yina and Shen Feibai into the game. The old man who mocked Wu Yina that day was arranged by me, with the aim of provoking her into making a mistake and behaving rudely, so that the people would despise her. One is the orphan of a loyal minister, the other is the princess of an enemy nation. Naturally, the people's hearts are with me. The reason she came to make a scene with her 2 children was also because I had someone deliver the news to her. She is just as foolish as in her past life, showing no improvement at all, because love is blind with jealousy. It causes one to lose composure and ruin a winning hand. Your marriage with the Shen family was arranged by your parents and matchmakers. How can you break it off? The emperor's authority was palpable even without anger. The Uyghurs intend to form a marital alliance with Great Chu, which is a beneficial move for both nations to recuperate and thrive. Princess Uyina's mission is to secure peace between the 2 countries through her own sacrifice. Now that she has borne Shen Feibai a son and a daughter, how can she remain without status? Wouldn't that be a slap in the face to the Uyghurs? if handled improperly, it will surely provoke war. Princess Hyena is of noble status. Your Majesty must not demean her by making her a secondary wife." I paused, my voice choked with emotion, and continued, "Moreover, the He family has sacrificed everything for the country. Now, only my 3-year-old younger brother and I remain. I only wish to care for him until he grows up, to continue the He family line. I dare not hinder the important matter of the royal marriage alliance between our two nations." As soon as these words were spoken, the previously quiet court officials began to whisper among themselves. The imperial censorate's advising official was an old friend of my father. Yesterday, I had already done all the crying I needed to do, and these greedy officials had already swallowed the gifts I sent. For now, I'll just leave it at that. Others will naturally help push things along for me later. The imperial censor stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the people of Chang'an are all talking about how Shen Feibai has wronged the daughter of a loyal minister, and they are all expressing sympathy for the He family. Since Shen Feibai already has a child with the Yuga princess, his marriage arrangement with the He family naturally cannot proceed, otherwise it would dishearten the soldiers on the battlefield." The censors stood in their ranks and reported. His Majesty's face was grim, yet he could only suppress his anger and grant my request to break off the engagement with Shen Feibai. The current emperor, having killed his elder brother to ascend the throne, fears nothing more than the words the people's hearts. Even for the sake of his own reputation, he had to agree to my breaking off the engagement. Throughout history, which emperor has not wished to be remembered in the annals with a legacy of virtue? After the banquet, I changed into a different outfit and went to the prince's residence through a hidden door. Wu Yin, just like in my past life, was still pretending to be delicate and sickly. I tossed him the medicine I had prepared in advance. "Soon enough, I will send you back to the Yugas. I want to see you keep the promise you made to me." He lazily leaned against the bed, toying with that pill, and chuckled lightly. Really, what a ruthless little lady. I recalled his recklessness in my past life, and in a fit of anger, I snatched the pill and stuffed it into his mouth. "If you can't get my business done, there's no antidote, just wait for death." He glanced at me sideways with a smile, his crimson tongue licking my fingertip. "Got it, sister." I couldn't take it anymore and gave him a hard kick. In my previous life, the He family was executed, and I was saved by Wu Yin. It was only then that I realized the sickly prince I had been secretly protecting all these years was a mad dog biding his time, solely intent on killing his father and brother. When I saw the crown prince visiting the general's mansion with gifts in the main hall, I instantly understood the emperor's scheme. Without Shen Feibai, he wanted me to marry the crown prince and become the crown princess. It not only silences the murmurs of the public but also keeps me confined by his son's side. Unable to stir up trouble, just waiting for the right moment to wipe out my entire clan once again. Unfortunately, I am not an ant waiting to die, nor am I a useless pawn on his chessboard. Even a pawn can take the king, let alone a person. After attending several flower-viewing banquets in a row by the crown prince's side, the emperor's intentions have become clear to everyone. He messed up my affairs, and his majesty took his anger out on Shen Feibai. Although he wasn't demoted, he no longer enjoyed the same favor as before. I arranged to meet Shen Feibai and deliberately let Hyena know about it. "You and the crown prince are about to be engaged, so why are you still coming to see me?" he said irritably, with dark circles under his eyes, clearly not having been doing well lately. My eyes reddened. "Brother Feibai, Uni grew up with you. Don't you understand my heart?" His dark expression softened slightly. "You were the one who called off the engagement. Why bring this up now?" I watched the approaching purple figure, moved closer to Shen Feibai, and gently touched the dark circles under his eyes. "Brother Feibai, you've lost weight." The perfume I had sprinkled on my clothes earlier began to take effect. Shen Feibai's gaze grew increasingly dazed as he drew extremely close to me. I gave him a push and signaled with my eyes. When he saw Wu Yina, he instantly sobered up. Wu Yina looked at us suspiciously, my face flushed with embarrassment. And without saying a word, clearly looking guilty, I turned and ran away. That evening, the Shen family's informant came to report that Wu Yina and Shen Feibai had a big argument for some unknown reason. I smiled. It seemed that the small earring I had slipped into Shen Feibai's clothes had finally served its purpose. The next day, Wu Yina sent an invitation for me and the crown prince to visit her residence to admire the flowers, and I knew the opportunity had come. I've already broken off the engagement with Shen Feibai. I don't know why they're still looking for me. I'm really scared, I said timidly, lowering my gaze. "Don't be afraid, you are my future crown princess. No one can harm you in the slightest," he said with a gentle, radiant smile. "Seriously, The gentle young man. During the gathering, after some conversation, Wu Yina suddenly sneered and burst out, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, yesterday I found an earring in my husband's clothes." I picked up the lotus pastry beside me and proactively fed it to the Crown Prince. "Your Highness, have a taste." I was gentle and obedient, deeply winning his favor. The Crown Prince leaned in and took a bite, about to speak with a smile, but the next moment, he collapsed to the ground, bleeding from all 7 orifices. His eyes stared blankly at me as blood slowly spread across his eye sockets. I let out a cry and fell back onto my maid. Hyena was also stunned. And the guards all rushed in from the surroundings. Amid the chaos, I watched as the Crown Prince's body was carried away. Weeping uncontrollably, I lunged forward, grabbing Hyena's hand and shouting, "It was you. You killed His Highness. The Yugas sent you to assassinate the Crown Prince of Great Chu, didn't they?" The Imperial Guards separated us, taking Wu Yina into custody to enter the palace. After I was helped into the sedan chair heading into the palace, I expressionlessly rubbed the lingering powdery sensation on my fingertips. In my past life, the Crown Prince was ordered by the Dog Emperor to serve as the execution supervisor. The day before the execution, my third sister was dragged from his bed in exactly the same way, her 7 orifices bleeding, her eyes wide open in death. Now it's just a matter of tit for tat. The Dog Emperor deliberately sent me the Crown Prince as a sharp blade, so how could I not make good use of him to eliminate Hyena? Using another's strength to eliminate one's enemy was the first lesson my father taught me in military strategy. Now that I'm putting it into practice, I suppose I haven't let him down. The Crown Prince died in Hyena's residence, and as the Princess of the Yugas, she will be the first to bear the brunt. Her marriage alliance, following the death of the Crown Prince, would only be seen as a premeditated murder of Chu's future heir. The nature of the Crown Prince's death has now shifted from a struggle among women in the inner court to a matter between 2 nations. One misstep could lead to war. Wu Yina's days of ease have come to an end. The Crown Prince has stopped breathing. The imperial physician confirmed he was poisoned with arsenic. Wu Yina was searched, and the court physician found traces of arsenic powder on her fingertips. Soon after, officials from the Dali Temple reported that Wu Yina's personal maid had indeed purchased arsenic a few days prior. With the evidence conclusive, Wu Yina was imprisoned. No one knew that her personal maid was actually my third sister in disguise. The veil of the Uyghur woman really did me a great favor. Now, Hyena's maid has also been executed by my secret guard, leaving no witness to testify. Seizing the opportunity, I knelt on the ground. The Crown Prince held sincere feelings for me, and now that he has been harmed by someone, I am willing to observe 3 years of mourning for him. To prevent the Dog Emperor from pushing other men on me, I must cut off his ideas at the root. The Emperor had few children, and the Crown Prince was his most beloved. Now that the Crown Prince was dead, he was grief-stricken, and upon hearing my request, along with the support of other ministers, he did not agree, but said he would consider it. On the way back, I deliberately took a detour to wait on the road that one must pass to return to the Dali Temple. The minister of the Court of Judicial Review, Ju Yubai, sat on his horse with a stern expression and an icy demeanor, making others afraid to approach. Locked in the prison cart behind him was Wu Yina, bound hand and foot and gagged. To prevent any assassination attempts, the Imperial Guards surrounded the prison cart. Hyena saw me, her pupils widening in agony, hatred pressing in from all directions. I smiled at her gently. Soon, her beloved Shenlang would soon be joining her. I will not let any of these beasts, whose hands are stained with the blood of the Xie family, get away. I returned to the mansion through the back gate of the general's residence, while Shun Feibai was making a scene at the front gate, demanding to see me. I naturally knew why he had come. The Crown Prince was dead, and Hyena had been imprisoned. The Great Chu would undoubtedly demand an explanation from the Yugas. 3 years ago, in the battle against the Yugas, although the treacherous emperor and Shun Feibai betrayed my father and brother, in the end, the tide of the war turned, and we emerged victorious. No one from the Xie family survived, and the Yugas also suffered heavy losses, with several major tribes engaging in internal strife. Qiluer's faction broke away from the Yugas, establishing their own kingdom in the Tianshan region and challenging Yasuo for dominance. If Yasuo leads the Yugas to war against the Great Chu, Qiluer might very well take action. By then, the Great Chu and Qiluer would launch a pincer attack on Yasuo from both front and rear, ensuring his defeat. Therefore, without completing the unification of the Yugas, Yasuo would never dare to go to war with the Great Chu. He couldn't afford to gamble. By then, Uyina would inevitably become a useless pawn, left to the mercy of the Great Chu, and her child with Shun Feibai would become a sacrifice to quell the emperor's wrath. Shun Feibai had already taken the contraceptive soup, and his son with Uyina was his only bloodline, the sole heir of the Shun family. He had no choice but to protect him. The only way to save Uyina now is for me, who was also in the pavilion at the time, to take the blame, or perhaps. Shun Feibai's intention in coming here was to have me plead with Chief Justice Ju Yubai to delay the case for a while, giving the Shun family time to come up with a solution. He himself didn't dare to approach Ju Yubai. Ever since he brought Uyina back to the capital and humiliated me, Ju Yubai had been causing him trouble both openly and behind the scenes, both in and out of court. Ju Yubai is the younger brother of my third sister-in-law, Ju Shuyi. The Ju family's status declined after Ju's father passed away while in office. Not only did my father not break off the engagement, but he also brought both the Ju siblings into the Xie family to study. After my third sister-in-law came of age, she married my third brother, Ju Yubai, who had gained fame at a young age, passed the imperial examination as the top scholar at the age of 15. Now, barely in his 20s, he already holds a position among the 9 high ministers. After Ju Yubai assumed his official post, he moved out of the Xie family to avoid gossip. 3 years ago, after the Xie family's misfortune, he disregarded the censor's impeachment and moved back to the Xie residence, silently holding up the family's honor for me. I vaguely remember the day my father and brother's coffins returned to the capital. He held me as I cried myself to exhaustion, his eyes red and voice hoarse. Uni, from now on, I am your own brother, as long as I live. I will ensure the Xie family's prosperity. Do not be afraid, from this day forward, your brother will protect you. And he truly kept his word. I glanced at the sky, changed into plain white mourning clothes, pinned a white flower at my temple, and took a sedan chair from the back door to enter the palace. At the same time, my maid, dressed in fabric similar to mine, got into the sedan chair and headed to the hostage residence. The person Shun Feibai had planted in the general's mansion was misled by me and secretly went to report to Shun Feibai. Shun Feibai immediately rushed on horseback to the hostage residence, but my maid changed direction midway and went to the Buddhist temple to burn the scriptures I had prepared. That evening, just as I was kneeling in the imperial study begging the emperor to allow me to observe 3 years of mourning for the crown prince, Shun Feibai arrived at the hostage residence. The moment he stepped into the Proton Prince's residence, a great fire swept through the entire estate. Kneeling outside the imperial study, the emperor was still grieving the crown prince's death and had not summoned me. Before long, Ju Yubai arrived in haste with the commander of the 9 gates, kneeling beside me. Ju Yubai and I exchanged a glance, then averted our eyes from each other. Your Majesty, something terrible has happened. Shun Feibai has rescued Wu Yin, and they have already left the city, the 9 gates commander shouted. What? The dog emperor trembled as he stepped out, his face deathly pale. What did you say? Ju Yubai kowtowed and spoke methodically. Your Majesty, Shun Feibai and the Yuga princess have a child who is already 3 years old, which clearly shows his deep ties with the Yugas. Now that Wu Yina has been imprisoned for poisoning the crown prince, the Yugas are worried that we might harm their second prince, Wu Yin. That's why they didn't hesitate to expose Shun Feibai's identity as a spy to rescue him. I request your Majesty's permission to search Shun's residence and find evidence of his treason. In the past, the emperor would never have allowed Ju Yubai to search Shun's residence. But now that Shun Feibai and Wu Yin have left the capital together, the emperor has no reason to stop Ju Yubai from doing this. He could only issue an edict, ordering the commander of the 9 gates to lead men to pursue Shun Feibai, while sending Ju Yubai to raid the Shun residence. Fearing that his relationship with Shun Feibai might be exposed, he specifically sent his personal eunuch to accompany them. As I knelt to take my leave, he suddenly stared straight at me, his murky eyes as cold as a venomous snake. Yet his face was filled with utmost kindness. Yun Yi, the military tally of the Xie family army was left to you by your father. Since the deaths of your father and brother in battle, the court has lacked capable military commanders. If the Uyghurs ever provoke a war in the future, I fear I may have to borrow your family's private troops. I immediately knelt down. Your subject is deeply apprehensive. The Xie family's ability to maintain a private army is entirely due to the protection of the founding emperor. Our ancestors guarded the empire for the founding emperor, which is why this exception was granted. The Xie family has never dared to forget this kindness through the generations. For my father and brothers to have laid down their lives for your Majesty's empire was their honor. Now, the Xie army is left with only the old, weak, and disabled soldiers. truly unfit for any grand occasion, with Generals Han and Shui stationed at the border. Even if the Uyghurs send troops, they can repel tens of thousands of enemies. Your Majesty truly has no need to worry." He lowered his gaze, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I was merely speaking casually." "Uni, why so alarmed? Your Xie family army once shattered the Qiulong formation, saving Emperor Taizu's life, which is why he bestowed such honors upon you. If the Xie family army were all old, weak, or disabled, wouldn't my hundreds of thousands of soldiers be mere inexperienced youths? I recall, Uni. You followed your father to the battlefield at the age of 8 and were already leading troops in combat by your teens. In the second year of Qianyu, your elder brother was trapped with his troops in the Yucha Valley and unfortunately captured. During the enemy's challenge, it was you who single-handedly captured their commander, thus rescuing your brother. Your elder brother was so delighted that he wanted to appoint you as a general, and you were only 14 that year. What? When my elder brother was on the throne, you could go to the battlefield and achieve great deeds for him. Now that I am on the throne, you refuse." I knelt down. "I am your Majesty's subject. If your Majesty needs me to charge into battle, even if it means making me a cook, I would do it." He laughed, his tone sinister. "Yun Yi carries the blood of the Xie family. Every member of your Xie family is a born general. How could I relegate you to being a mere cook?" I kneel on the ground. "Your humble servant is filled with fear. Though I speak of fear, there is not a trace of it in my heart. No wonder it wasn't enough for my father and brother to die. Even with only a few orphans and widows left in the Xie family, he still seeks to eliminate them all. What he fears is every descendant of the Xie family. What he fears is the Xie army, which only the Xie family can control. It's a pity, whether in his past life or this one, he has to remain cautious all the time. The Xie family members are not only born military talents but, in the future, also possess the makings of emperors. His imperial throne was seized by killing his own elder brother. He who shaves another's head may have his own head shaved. Killing him, how could it not be justified? I only hope that this time, he won't kneel before the world and kowtow to me like he did in his past life, trampling the dignity of an emperor underfoot. All just to beg me to spare his life, even if it means being reduced to a beggar." Truly, he had not an ounce of integrity. Utterly contemptible. Zhu Yubai had already ordered his men to surround the Shen residence upon entering the palace, but before leaving, the emperor said, to avoid alerting the enemy, the raid should wait until the next day. What he meant was clear to both Zhu Yubai and me. On the way back, Zhu Yubai got into my sedan chair, and I handed him a stack of letters. After opening and reading them, he frowned, his tone unreadable. "These were given to you by Wu Yin." Before Wu Yin left, I had him write several handwritten letters, all addressed to Shen Feibai. The content is naturally fabricated, whether Shen Feibai is in the Great Chu or not. These few letters from Wu Yin alone are enough to sentence him to death. Tonight, His Majesty will surely send his trusted aides to search the Shen residence and dispose of anything that could incriminate him. 3 years ago, during that battle, the Emperor appointed Shen Feibai as the military supervisor. There must have been numerous letters exchanged. If even one of them were to be exposed to the world, his reputation would be ruined in an instant. In the annals of history, he would be remembered with nothing but scorn. How could he bear that? He frowned and looked at me. Is Wu Yin trustworthy? He is the second prince of the Uyghurs. Cooperating with him is like making a pact with a tiger. If he betrays you, you'll be left with nowhere to be buried. I smiled and said, brother, he and I are life and death friends. I owe him my life. His fingers curled slightly as he turned his head away, his voice turning cold. Wu Yin's purpose in this journey is to rebel and seize the throne. Once he kills Wu Yasuo, he will become the Khan of the Uyghurs. Tielue is his uncle. If Wu Yin ascends to the throne, Tielue will surely submit. Since you've already agreed to join me in this great undertaking, you should know that Wu Yin would never give up the throne for you. There is no future for the two of you. I chuckled. Does brother think I want any kind of future with Wu Yin? Zhu Yubai glanced at me, pursed his lips, cleared his throat slightly. The dim, flickering candlelight cast a faint blush across his face. What I've said to you still stands. I look at him with clear eyes. I regard my elder brother as the bright moon in the sky, never daring to show the slightest disrespect. For Wu Yin, it must be him and no one else, and for me, it is the same. Elder brother, you achieved fame at a young age, your strategies renowned throughout the land. It is only a matter of time before your name is immortalized in history. How could you possibly marry into my general's household and become the husband of someone like me? Wu Yin is a hypocrite, and I am a true scoundrel. We are a match made in heaven, destined to be written side by side in the history books. scorned by thousands, elder brother, pure as the clear wind and bright moon, deserves to be praised by all. I dare not tarnish your name." He lowered his gaze and smiled self-deprecatingly. "How do you know this isn't what my heart desires? Yet you won't even give me a chance. Uni, how cruel you are." I averted my gaze and fell silent. He had lived a life of integrity and now held a high position among the 9 ministers. It wouldn't be long before his portrait would be hung in the Lingyan Pavilion. In my past life, he risked his life to remonstrate for my sake in the Golden Hall, nearly losing his life. I joined Wu Yin in raising an army to rebel, as the minister of the Court of Judicial Review. He held many secrets of the court officials. For my sake, he committed unjust acts, threatening high-ranking court officials to lobby the court on my behalf. When I ascended the throne, the censor-in-chief vehemently protested that a woman could not become emperor. It was he who wrote the female emperor's policy to quell the disputes for me. Within just 3 months of my reign, the 3 capital regions were hit by successive droughts and locust plagues. And rumors spread among the people that I had gained the throne unjustly. He took off his court robes as the chancellor and volunteered to serve as a frontier official, guarding the 3 capital regions on my behalf until the disaster subsided, ultimately working himself to death in office. He fulfilled the promise he once made to me to hold up the He family, ensuring its prosperity and wealth for as long as he lived. Later, when I ascended the throne as emperor, he steadied the court for me. As long as he was there, my reign remained secure. He was originally a man of integrity, yet because of me, he bore the infamy of a treacherous minister, condemned by history and scorned by thousands. In this life, I want him to sit firmly on the high platform, to live a life of integrity, clean and pure, to be a virtuous minister remembered for generations. I want him to be revered for ages, to be enshrined in the Lingyan Pavilion, to become the most virtuous minister of all time. He supported me for a lifetime. Now, it's my turn to protect him. Wu Yin's methods are as sharp and ruthless as in the previous life, swift, precise, and deadly. Before he even reached the Yuga territory, his subordinates had already taken Uyasuo's life. Though Wu Yin was in the Chu kingdom, he had planted many spies and undercover agents around Uyasuo, so he was well informed about the court affairs in the Yuga region. The next day, Zhu Yubai, after searching the Shen family, handed Wu Yin's letters to the emperor. The emperor was half convinced and half doubting, and for a long time, he did not issue any orders regarding the punishment of the Shen family. It wasn't until 3 days later, when news of Shen Feibai being treated as an honored guest by Wu Yin reached the Chu kingdom, that the emperor finally believed it. Enraged during the morning court session, he threw down the memorials and sentenced the entire Shen family to immediate execution. Zhu Yubai pleaded, "As we had discussed the previous night, asking your majesty to think twice and spare the Shen family's lives to keep Shen Feibai in check." Half a month later, Wu Yin had his men rush 3 items to me by express horse. The heads of my father and brother, hung above the Hanren pit, along with Wu Yasuo's head, and a letter from him. His handwriting was as wild and unrestrained as ever. "May this letter find you in peace. I have already destroyed the Hanren pit and cremated all the remains, which have been sealed and stored. They will be brought back to Chang'an with the army in the future, fulfilling their wish to return to their homeland in spirit. And though my sister sees me as a threat and has coerced me with poison, my devotion to her has remained unwavering for 10 years. I am at her disposal, willing to sacrifice everything, even at the cost of my life." I couldn't help but roll my eyes, whether in this life or the last. He has always been adept at playing the weak and innocent. The Uyghur tribe was divided, yet within less than half a month of his return, he had already reorganized and reunified the tribe. It was clear that the previous state of division had also been orchestrated by him. Though he was in the Great Chu, his methods were no less formidable, revealing the depth of his cunning and strategic mind. Upon hearing that Wu Yin had killed Wu Yasuo, becoming the new Khan of the Uyghurs and unifying the tribe, the emperor could not sleep peacefully night after night. He sent an envoy to demand an explanation from Wu Yin regarding the crown prince's death at the hands of Wu Yina. Who would have thought that Wu Yin detained the envoy, then reorganized his forces, and within just 3 days, he captured 2 cities in a row and even executed Generals Han and Shui. I knew he was doing this to vent my anger, after my father and brother died. The emperor sent his own trusted men to take command of the army. After Han and Shui took office, they ostracized the old subordinates of the He family, appointing only their own favorites. The current army is plagued by empty payrolls, and even the generals are indulging in pleasure and debauchery. How can such officers, softened to the bone by such conditions, possibly withstand the iron cavalry of the Uyghurs? Reports from the border arrived one after another. And the emperor's white hairs increased day by day. When he received the news that Generals Han and Shui had been killed, he was so enraged that he fainted on the spot. When Zhu Yubai found me, I was burning the letter that Wu Yin had sent to me. I was being petty-minded before. The black stealth cavalry did not harm the common people wherever they passed. Even when attacking cities, they only drove them away. He was a hostage sent by the Uyghurs after their defeat 10 years ago. He witnessed with his own eyes how the Uyghur people suffered from displacement and the hardships of war. How could he treat human life as worthless? The greatest suffering brought by war falls upon the innocent common people. Whether Uyghur or Han, no one desires war. They only wish to farm in peace and have 3 meals a day without being uprooted and adrift. Zhu Yubai sighed, but I think Wu Yin is too proud to bow his head and willingly submit to you. I stared at the ashes of the burned paper scraps and said calmly, he will. The Uyghur region is remote, and the continuous heavy snows have made it impossible for their livestock to graze on fertile grass and water. Newborn babies can't even survive the winter. He is proud, he has integrity, but now he is the Khan of a nation. Above his pride are his countless subjects. If their situation weren't so dire, if they could sustain themselves, who would want to start a war? Wu Yin had no choice. Zhu Yuebai's expression gradually turned grave. Han and Shui are dead. His Majesty has no more generals to use. At the next morning court, he will likely issue an edict for you to lead the troops. I gazed at the red plum blossoms blooming defiantly in the cold outside the window and chuckled softly. This game of chess has reached its final stages. Keep Waina alive soon, she will see her beloved Shenlang. Just as Zhu Yubai had predicted, His Majesty indeed appointed me as the commander to lead the army. Even now, he still covets the 100,000-strong Xie family army in my hands. He appointed his own confidant as deputy general, giving him 300,000 troops, while only assigning me 100,000 soldiers, claiming that my Xie family army could take on 100 enemies each. Both Zhu Yubai and I knew full well that the emperor intended for his confidant to seize the opportunity to eliminate me, in order to take control of the Xie family army's command token and the army itself. As the army set out for the border, halfway through the journey, that confidant began to grow restless. Sneaking into my tent in the middle of the night in an attempt to assassinate me, I cut off his head and threw it before the crowd. The deputy general was killed by bandits. From now on, you will obey my orders and pledge loyalty to His Majesty. After this battle is over, rewards will be given based on merit. We were already halfway to the border. Even if anyone had objections, they dared not speak up now, fearing they would be the first to stand out and meet a gruesome end. So they had no choice but to comply. Late at night, Wu Yin brought Shen Feibai under guard. My third sister and I split up to act separately. She led the 300,000 troops to the border. Escorted secretly by Wu Yin, I, on the other hand, returned to the capital with Shen Feibai and the 100,000-strong Xie family army to purge the court of corrupt officials. The imperial guards stationed inside and outside the palace had already been replaced. The next day, as court convened as usual, I entered the hall clad in armor, a long sword at my waist, escorting Shen Feibai. The 100,000-strong Xie family army had reached the city gates and had taken control of the entire city the previous night. The despicable emperor pointed at me. Xie Yuni, what are you doing? Are you trying to rebel? The ministers in the hall also began to condemn me. I sneered and kicked Shen Feibai in the rear. If you want your son to live, then tell the world what our emperor had you do 3 years ago. Shen Feibai trembled as he knelt on the ground. After days of torment by Wu Yin, he was no longer human nor ghost, his courage completely shattered by fear. His Majesty ordered me to collude with the Uyghur Crown Prince Wu Yasuo, to reveal General Xie's military deployment plans, and to burn the provisions, cutting off General Xie's retreat. Half of the 17 Xie family generals who died for the nation were poisoned on the emperor's orders. The courtiers were so shocked they were speechless. What nonsense are you talking? The dog emperor roared. Shen Feibai produced a sealed secret edict. I have proof. The dog emperor's face turned deathly pale, shouting, it's fake, that's fake. I took the secret decree and glanced at the jade seal stamped on it, sneered, and threw it to the ground. The court officials picked it up, scrambling to examine it, then fell into a long silence. Shen Feibai shouted loudly. The emperor made a deal with Uyaso. The slaughtered civilians of those 3 cities were His Majesty's show of sincerity. No minister could tolerate a ruler they served treating the people as worthless grass, let alone killing loyal officials, slaughtering civilians, and betraying the nation to the enemy. The imperial censor, holding the secret decree, wept uncontrollably, choking out his words. How absurd, utterly absurd. Our Majesty is actually offering the lives of his own subjects to be slaughtered by the enemy's army, a foolish ruler. Those are your people, those are the citizens of our great Chu. The court officials had tears in their eyes, and the civil ministers erupted in curses. No one could have imagined that the emperor they served would be so deranged. The emperor roared, I did not. I drew the long sword from my waist and pressed it against his neck, saying coldly, it is said that both thunder and rain are the grace of the sovereign. Today, your subject seeks a favor from your Majesty. The long sword in my hand slashed across his throat, blood spurted out, splattering onto my face. I withdrew the blade, indifferently wiping away the disgusting bloodstain on my face. I dare to ask your Majesty to die. Wu Yina was imprisoned in the imperial prison of the Dali Temple. Wu Yin specially procured a wolf for me. And I threw the two of them into the wolf's cage. That wolf had been starving for a long time and was almost unrecognizable. Shen Feibai, I promised you I would spare your son's life, but you must die. I turned and walked away, the sound of Wu Yina's agonized screams mingling with Shen Feibai's pleas for mercy. My eyes gradually welled up with tears. I knelt on the ground, retching uncontrollably. When third sister-in-law was thrown into the wolf pack by Wu Yina, did she scream just as miserably? Did my 3-year-old nephew, who had just learned to call me sister, also vanish without a trace, leaving not even a bone behind? I have been reborn. I have finally protected mother and my younger siblings, but my brothers, my 17th brother, my third sister-in-law, my little nephew, they cannot return. They will never return. I have lost them forever and ever. Even though I killed Wu Yina, Shen Feibai, and that damned dog emperor, they will never come back. I will never receive stacks of red envelopes again, nor eat the cane sugar that 17th brother bought for me. No one will bring me picture books anymore, and big brother will no longer scold me for not acting like a proper girl. A hand appeared before me, and I looked up at the man through tear-filled eyes. In his palm was a piece of candy. It's sweet. He crouched down to feed me, gently wiping the tears from the corners of my eyes. I sobbed, choking up as I said, it's not as sweet as the one 17th brother bought for me. Wu Yin flicked my forehead and said discontentedly, bought, I made this myself. You little ingrate. I cried even harder. Half a month after I ascended the throne, Wu Yin submitted a letter of surrender, willing to become a vassal state of Great Chu. This was an outcome welcomed by both nations, especially the common people. Huehe merchants gradually increased in the marketplaces, and the cultures of the two nations blended, growing increasingly harmonious. Not long after, Wu Yin submitted a petition requesting to marry into the Huehu tribe. In the petition, he wrote with firm conviction, claiming that to set a precedent for intermarriage between the Han and the Huehu, he was willing to sacrifice himself and set an example. I laughed in anger and immediately rejected it. This man is utterly shameless. He's been spreading rumors everywhere that I poisoned him, forcing him to take some kind of toxic substance, and now I'm refusing to take responsibility. That wasn't poison at all, it was just something to scare him. I grabbed him and gave him a good scolding, but he only became more relentless, submitting a petition every single day, and even bothering Zhu Yubai with it. Zhu Yubai, now promoted to Prime Minister, has a mountain of matters to handle and no time to deal with him, so he threw both the man and his gifts out. I thought that would keep him in line, but who knew that after court, I'd find him all dressed up in red and green in my own bedchamber. He looked at me with a pitiful expression. Why won't you let me marry into another family? After saying that, he turned fierce again. Don't tell me you're planning to keep some other wild man in your harem. I was so sleepy, I kicked him off the bed and sprawled on it myself. Get lost. He scurried onto the bed and began massaging my shoulders. Your Majesty, I believe your harem has been empty for far too long and is in need of a diligent, attentive, and warm-hearted person like me. Besides, our two families are as close as one now. What's wrong with you doting on me a little? I closed my eyes contentedly. Dote on you. The end.